Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of Winchester City Council's Planning Committee, taking place in the Walton Suite of Winchester Guildhall. It is Wednesday, the 5th of February 2025, and the time is 9:30 a.m. My name is Councillor Jane Rutter, and I'm Chair of the Planning Committee. And as this is the first Planning Committee of this year, I'd like to wish you all a happy new year. Around the table, we have the other elected members of the committee, and we are supported today by a number of officers. We have Lorna Hutchings, the service lead for the built environment, Daniel Lucas, our legal advisor, the case officers who will sit over there and change with each item, and Claire Buchanan from Democratic Services, who supports the committee and operates the recording equipment. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded to the Council's YouTube channel. Subtitles are available and advice on how to turn those on is set out on our website. I need to remind you all to ensure your mobile phones and any other electronic devices are on silent or preferably turned off entirely. In the unlikely event that it is necessary to evacuate the building, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow all the instructions given to you by our team. Please look at the handout provided on your chairs or on the information slides displayed as you walked in and during the breaks for further guidance about this meeting. To ensure the smooth running of the meeting, I ask that nobody calls out from the back of the room during the proceedings. In accordance with the public speaking protocols of the meeting, those who have registered to speak will be able to address the meeting for their allotted time. If there is any disruption of the proceedings and the committee is not respected, it may be necessary to temporarily adjourn the meeting. Finally, can I welcome members of the public to the meeting? Those of you who have registered to speak, I will call you forward when it is your turn to make your contribution. Members of the committee may ask you questions of clarification, so please remain at the microphone until after members' questions. The microphone is turned on by pressing the button on the base of the unit, and a timer will appear on the screen to remind you of your remaining time. Turning now to the agenda. Do we have any apologies and deputy members, Claire?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for absence received from Councillor Cunningham, with Councillor Godfrey deputising. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And members, any disclosures of interests, please? I think initially we all need to disclose an interest, but not an interest that is not a significant interest. In the case of item number, where is it? Hang on. Number 10, Abbots Ann Road, Winchester. When that comes up, that is because that is the application of a member of the cabinet, and so obviously Councillor Lerny is known to us all, but I certainly have would not consider that my the fact that she is a colleague will not impact my decision making in this matter, and I think that we would all subscribe to that declaration. Yes, so if that could be minuted, please. So, other declarations of interest. Councillor Ashwell.
Sorry, Chair, I just want to add to that. I have actually discussed the application with Councillor Lerny's husband, so I think I will not be in the meeting for that.
So you will leave the room for that application. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much. I need to declare that I have a disclosable pecuniary interest in respect of items on the agenda due to my additional role as a Hampshire County Councillor. However, as there is no material conflict of interest regarding these items, I have a dispensation granted by the Audit and Governance Committee that enables me to speak and vote on these matters. Additionally, on items 13 and 14, they are within my Hampshire County Council division. However, I had no conversations with the applicant or any objectors.
Thank you. Councillor Ashwell.
And on item 12, I'm the ward councillor for the area, but I haven't spoken to the applicant.
Thank you. Councillor Small.
The same as Councillor Ashwell. That's in my ward, item number 12.
you've not predetermined this application at all or discussed it? No, thank you. Any further disclosures of interest? No, thank you. We now move to item 3 on the agenda, the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 12th of December. Those have been sent round to everybody. Are those agreed as a correct record of the meeting? Thank you. Right. And do we accept the update sheet to the agenda, please? Is that agreed? Thank you. Right. Just before we move on to item 6, I'd just like to say that all members of the committee, I think, were telephoned by the applicant in this case after our pre-visit. We had a site visit, an official site visit to the site yesterday morning, and then we were called by. But I think all members simply said to them that we don't discuss applications over the phone, and that any questions that we have will be asked of the officers this morning. And I believe everybody said that. Those that I've spoken to about this have said that that was their response. If I could just say to applicants and developers, it's not productive to telephone round members of the committee. We don't appreciate it. If you think we have questions, you are able to email us, and but we much prefer that all information is passed through our officers. Okay, so application number 6, Berwick Court Nursing Home, Berwick Road, and our presenting officer is Megan Osborne. So if you'd like to give us your presentation, please, Megan. Thank you.
Sorry, I'd firstly like to draw your attention to the update sheet. There are slight changes to condition 2. That's just there were a typo on the plan numbers. Condition 7, it was just to add the words prior to commencement of the development hereby permitted above the damp proof course to that condition. Condition 19. There was a typo. It was a repetitive section in that, so that's been removed. Condition 20, we've just changed part of the wording on that to say about the species sizes, because that's actually a detail that was already given within that plan number that I've quoted. Condition 22. It's just the parking management plan condition, so it's just added a few words to that to beef it up a bit, basically, to ask for a bit of additional information. There were 2 further comments from neighbours that were just added there as well, and then a further condition has been added regarding the noise condition. So asking for details to be provided on that. There is also a verbal update that we'd like to add the word prior to damp proof course on that condition as well. Okay. The site is located within the development boundary of Winchester on the northern side of Berwick Road. You can see Berwick Road here. And then there's the site here. And then to the back of the site, there is the Tennis and Rackets Club. And to the east of the site is number 5 Berwick Road. And to the east further up, I'll show you a better plan. So right, here we go. To the east further up, there are dwellings on Berwick Close, number 1. Side onto the dwelling here. The back of the site here is back onto the paddle courts of the tennis club. And to the west of the site, there is Lynch Road, which leads up to the tennis club, and then Pinehurst Close, which are dwellings. And this is the existing building on the site at the moment. it's currently a 50-bed care home, which actually has been not in use for some time now. It's proposed to demolish this and replace with 32 apartments with a mix of 1, 2 and 3 bedrooms. 50% of these apartments are going to be used for affordable dwellings, which is a total of 16 apartments. This is a close-up of the front of the site. So this is the proposed new access. So we saw on site there are currently an access in and an access out, or 2 access on the site. They are going to create 1 access. To the right of this, to the east of this, there is a proposed bin store, access into the site and parking for 18 cars. This includes 2 disabled parking spaces and 2 visitor parking spaces. So this is a floor plan. You can make out the colours. So the colours I'll tell you which ones they mean. So the pink ones are the 2-bedroom apartments. There's a total of 20 of these. The let me get that right. Blue ones are so that's in the other. The blue ones are 3-bed apartments. There are 2 of these. And the 1-bed apartments are green, and there are a total of 10 of these. Just go back to the floor plan. As you can see to the front here, there's a large area of cycle parking proposed. These are the floor plans. So this is the first floor plan and the second floor plan. And the roof plan. Take you through the elevations as well. So this is the elevations for the bin store towards the front of the site. The flat roof construction. The trees along the front of the site are all being retained. This is the elevation to the front, fronting onto Berwick Road. To the east, you can see number 5 here. And the different elements and the gable fronts to the fronting onto the street. And we worked well with the architects to get the design improved from the original application submission, and ultimately came up with this scheme. I'll take you through some of the visuals later. It'll be easier to show you. This is the side elevation. This is eastern elevation. So you can see the flat cycle storage here, flat roof, single story element, and then it steps back to a 3-story element, sorry, and then it steps forward again along this rear boundary on the east. And this is the rear boundary that backs onto the paddle courts, the tennis courts at the back. And this is the other side boundary on the west that sides onto Lynch Road. This shows the street scene, so you can see the outline of the existing building in this picture. And then you can see number 5 here. And then Lynch Road. So just show you some of the visuals. So the bottom one is what was superseded and the top one is the amended proposal. So they removed quite a lot of the bulk on the eastern elevation because we felt that it was too much on that street scene, especially in relation to neighbouring properties. And we feel that now the rhythm of the buildings is more consistent with the rest of the street, along with the changes to the materials, which breaks up those elevations. And again, you can see the big bulk that's been removed here. And it steps back and the different changes in the materials. So I'll take you through some photos. This is looking down Lynch Road. So the site is on the left of the screen here. And on the right are the houses, you can't see them, on Pinehouse Close. So this is the road that accesses the tennis club. Again, the same road, so Lynch Road, and this is the existing building that's on the site. So that's the western elevation, facing west. So this is the front of the site, existing building. You can see the 2 accesses that go into the site there, and these trees are going to be retained. Again, further into the site, the existing building, which is going to be demolished to the east from the existing dwelling, existing care home, sorry. This is to show you an aerial photo. It's probably quite a good one to see the existing building on the site. To the rear, this shows tennis courts, but they're paddle courts now. To the east, number 5, and then the dwellings on Berwick Close that back onto the site. So number 5 sides onto the site, and Berwick Close backs onto the site. I'll take you through some measurements. So the rear, from the proposal to the elevation, on the eastern elevation to the rear elevation of number 1 is approximately 38 metres. This shows you an overlay of the proposal with the red outline is the existing that was on the site. Due to comments from Urban Design Officer and the Planning Officer, the design of the density has been amended, as you've seen before in the other plans. The proposed number of apartments is reduced from 36 to 32, and the design has been altered. It's considered that the site has capacity to handle this number of apartments, and the design is more consistent with other buildings in the street scene. In conclusion, the proposal is located within the development boundary of Winchester. Where new residential development is in principle acceptable. It meets the housing mix, it exceeds the affordable housing policy requirement. The design is now acceptable in relation to the character of the surrounding area, and it would not result in any unacceptable impact towards neighbouring amenities. The parking provision, whilst low, is considered acceptable through mitigation, which should be encouraged in this very sustainable location. Therefore, the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions on pages 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42 and 43, and the heads of terms as laid out within the report as well for the 106. Thank you, Chair.
And all the stuff on the update sheet.
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you very much. We now turn to public speaking. We have several public speakers on this item. The right page. So we start with our objectors, Peter Richards and Mark Robinson. Hello, you are Peter, and are you speaking on behalf of Mark? You're not going to speak. Okay, do you want to come up in case members have questions or clarification that you might be able to help with? Thank you, that's what we usually do. Yep, please. And the microphone is switched on by pressing the button on the base, and you will have 3 minutes from when you start speaking. Thank you very much. Whenever you're ready.
Good morning. I live at 2 Berwick Close, our family home of 15 years that directly borders the site to the northeast. Like many fellow local residents who raised their objections on the planning website, we're not against the development in principle for residential use. What we oppose is the over-development of the site in a way which will not achieve the developer's stated aims, as well as actively damaging the local neighbourhood and community. The amended proposal remains overbearing and ill-considered. It's clear from the applicant's own drawings, the elevations we just saw here, how this development is significantly taller and bulkier than not only what currently exists on site, but also any other buildings on this side of Berwick Road. It is simply not true when the applicants describe the proposal as entirely appropriate to its context in terms of urban form. The highest roofline and biggest bulk of the proposal are, as we saw, at the rear of the property. This is where 3 stories plus a high roofline with integrated windows, not to mention protruding balconies, are proposed. But this is where the ground level is at its highest, several meters higher than road level. It is therefore where it will cause the most detrimental and invasive impact on local residents like us, directly overlooking our garden, office, living spaces, bedrooms, restricting our right to light, and with inevitable noise pollution. Having the bulk of the development at the rear of the property will also be possibly to the detriment of the future residents of this proposed development, because it will expose them to consistently invasive noise levels from the immediately adjacent paddle courts, which we saw there. This noise has recently been proven to be an issue by Winchester City Council, and I would draw your attention to the noise impact assessment by 24 Acoustics that concludes planning consent should not be granted. If these plans are approved, therefore, will this leave the developers or even the club open to potential legal action in the future? Nowhere is it clearer that this is a case of overdevelopment than when it comes to parking. Now, Councillor Morris will speak about this, so I won't dwell on it other than to say 32 flats, 18 parking spaces. It's not only in contravention of Winchester City Council's own rules, it is laughably insufficient. The inevitable overspill will add to an already saturated parking situation locally and will be highly detrimental, if not dangerous, to the local community. The parking shown there on Lynch Road, by the way, is tennis club parking. It's not public parking. As local residents, we appeal to the committee to refuse this application. It's a great irony that a site which has historically provided a service of care to its users and the local community is being lined up to do exactly the opposite. Please don't let this happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for sticking strictly within your 3 minutes. No, I'm sorry. Could you please not clap? It's distracting, and I will have to ask you to leave if you do it again. Thank you. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for our residents? No, I've made you sit up there for no reason. I do apologise, but thank you very much indeed for your contribution. Thank you. We now have, it's not on the update sheet, but in fact, Councillor Johnny Morris is now going to contribute. Councillor Morris was signed up to speak when this was supposed to be at the last committee meeting, which was postponed. So, and that his contribution wasn't carried forward. So I have allowed him to speak this morning without it being on the agenda. So thank you very much for coming along, Councillor Morris. And do you have up to 5 minutes? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak. To begin with, nobody is opposed to this site being redeveloped. The objections from residents all concern the problem that what is proposed is an overdevelopment of the site, which will be intrusive, obstructive and unworkable. The main problem with this application is the lack of parking provision. As you'll have read from the HEC Highways Response Note, 21st June 2024, under Winchester City Council's adopted parking standards, an application for 32 units would normally have a parking requirement of 62 places. The proposal has only 18 places. Even accounting for the idea that 16 of the units will be sold as car-free units, there's a shortfall of, I think, 13 places. Therefore, councillors are being asked today to agree to approve a proposal that does not meet our adopted parking standards. I also asked them to consider whether the proposal is even practical. They should bear in mind that although flats may be sold as car-free units, there is nothing to stop those residents from subsequently requiring a car when their circumstances change. But if they do, there'll be no spaces for them in the development, and they will not be able to get a parking permit on Berwick Road, so they will end up adding to an overspill of on-street parking on neighbouring streets. My own experience of similar car-free developments on Fromond Road is of neighbours in endless dispute about people parking in each other's spots. What is being proposed is also a development with no spare capacity for food deliveries, visitors and emergency services. I draw your attention to the consulting comments of HEC and the Highways Authority on that point. It is hard to see how the inclusion of a single car club site can mitigate this, but if this is part of the proposal, that will require a change of use planning permission. I'm also concerned that rather than address the concerns raised by HEC and the Highways Authority regarding parking provision, the applicant has attempted to plead mitigation using census data, which, given that it is based on residents rather than households, has the potential to be misleading when used to estimate the number of cars normally needed per flat. I therefore advise councillors to reject this application on the grounds that to approve it would be to make an exception to policy DM of the local plan and the Winchester Council Residential Parking Standards SPD. I also draw your attention to the urban design assessment. The number of parking spaces fall way below Winchester's parking standards for development of this type. I note that this proposal has already reduced the number of flats and increased the number of parking spaces, and suggest that this process continue in the same direction. I also note that the update sheet has them suggesting they're going to do a parking management scheme. I would suggest you to consider whether any parking management scheme is going to be practical given the lack of parking spaces, and also that any parking management scheme should come before you decide the building and how large it is going to be, rather than deciding how many parking spaces you're going to have and then trying to work out a parking management plan. The proposal also falls short of policy DM6, with the proposed open space, a narrow sliver of lawn, being insufficient for the number of residents, having no amenity for children, and being of a low standard of design, and I think being an almost permanent shadow from the balconies above. The narrow sliver of lawn also means this proposal falls short of policies CP13, CP15, CP16 and CP20. And I draw your attention to the comments of the HEC ecology team that the biodiversity net gain assessment that was submitted is of limited value as its accuracy cannot be checked. Those comments date from May last year, so the developers had ample opportunity to address that concern with an approved assessment and have not done so, which is an odd oversight, as one of the amendments to the original plan is a commitment to achieve 10% biodiversity net gain. The proposal also falls short of policies DM15, DM16 and DM17, as it is an imposing box-shaped block that will loom over neighbouring properties, particularly the garden of number 5 Berwick Road. It's the building of 3 stories and a pitched roof, so effectively 4 stories, and is positioned on a rise, giving it undue prominence over the rest of the street, particularly those on the south side, which have a lower topography. Regardless of this, the proposal also falls short of policy CP13 on design grounds, and I draw your attention to the urban design assessment that advises the removal of the balconies, which could possibly be made a condition in the unlikely event that this proposal is approved. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for the local councillor? Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chair. The on-street parking in that area, is that under permit or is it free for all in Berwick Road?
It's a permit application done by Hampshire County Council.
And the side roads?
I might bow to the judgment of the residents on this particular detail. Is that correct?
Single yellow line, close, double yellow line. Parking is extremely limited.
No, I have a question actually. I just wanted to ask about active travel and sustainable sites. So I know that whilst the planning policy is for a particular number of parking spaces, the direction of travel for the City Council is towards fewer parking spaces, fewer people having cars, more people walking and cycling. And to reflect that, this site has significant secure cycle storage, is in a very sustainable site in terms of bus routes, walking into the city and to shops and so on, and parks. So if we cannot call this a sustainable site where cars are not required, where could we in the whole city? You know, that your argument is that the parking is not sufficient. Therefore, the argument is that nowhere in the city can we expect that people don't have cars. Is that a sustainable future for the city?
I should express agreement regarding our aspirations as a council, and particularly our approval of sustainable travel. And this is a very good site for that, because it is within effective walking distance of the railway station and the city centre. So absolutely, yes. I would, on that point, remind everyone that you are under the existing rules and regulations and not any future rules and regulations that might be brought in. So while we have aspirations to sustainable travel, That is not what the current rules state, and any sort of development considered today must be under the current rules rather than any hypothetical future rules.
Well, we can raise that again with our officers. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Morris. Any other questions, members? No, thank you. And finally, we have Daniel Wiseman for the developer. If you'd like to come forward, please, Mr. Wiseman. Thank you. You will have up to 3 minutes, and the timer will start when you start speaking. Thank you.
Good morning, councillors, officers, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Daniel Wiseman from Gillings Planning, based in Colden Common. I'm very pleased to be here this morning and help present this important brownfield regeneration project that proposes much needed homes, including 16 affordable homes, all on the site of a redundant and vacant care home, a care home that was closed because it was no longer fit for purpose. I want to thank your officers for their time and support in helping shape these proposals. Your officers have worked very hard influencing the layout, the design, the amount, the appearance at all stages, including pre-application, numerous meetings, through the design review process, and a great deal of discussion along the way. So thank you. That discussion particularly focused on design, but definitely car parking and the protection of residential amenities. We've worked with your officers for well over a year. And we've overcome all concerns raised by officers and statutory consultees, which is a very high bar indeed. As a result of that iterative process, you've heard how the scheme was amended, the number of apartments were reduced, the number of parking places increased, cycle parking increased, and really crucially, the affordable housing has increased from a policy compliant 40% up to a generous 50%. The landscaping was increased, including 5 replacement trees. And the overall design, as you've heard, was reduced, particularly in relation to the impacts on number 5 Berwick Road. And we note that they've removed their objections. The high quality scheme before you is a well-designed, sustainably located development with the right balance. It's an efficient use of land, and it's the correct amount of parking to ensure it works, but also to encourage residents to walk and cycle. That is an approach that's been endorsed by your own officers and those at Hampshire County Council. The proposal is also sustainable in terms of green technologies. It includes exhaust air heat pumps, PV panels on the roof, a 10% net gain in biodiversity, which is measured and calculated. And of course, access to a car club with space, which is akin to around 16 spaces. That just acts as a benefit to obviously residents of this development, but also to those in the vicinity as well. If anyone on the road already would should choose to lose a car, or a child needs access to a car but doesn't own one. So that car club space is really important, and that will grow. The new dwellings will be modern, energy and water efficient, warm homes, helping the planet, but also helping residents with the cost of living crisis. In terms of sustainability, it's 300 metres to a bus stop, 650 metres to the public footpaths which take you over the Teg Down and Clarendon Way, 900 metres to the beautiful Orams Arbour, 760 metres to the Week local centre, including Waitrose and Aldi, 1,250 metres to the station, and also the bus hub that sits there. Schools and colleges are also on the doorstep. So you're right, this will contribute to your own council's desire for 20-minute neighbourhoods. We support the recommendation. We hope you will too. I'm joined today by my client, Jamie Pearson from Markle Homes, architect Matthew Gibbs from Architecture POB, and Sam Stone from Abbury Homes. And we'd be very happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. That's the end of your 3 minutes as well. Thank you. Members, questions to our applicant. Councillor White.
So regarding the limited parking and the mitigation for that parking, you mentioned the car club, but I'm not fully clear on how that would make up for the lack of parking and how that's going to work, really.
So thank you. That's a good question. So Enterprise already run the car club. They've got spaces at the station and towards the college. It's already working really well, and that will grow. And frankly, there are people that need this step on the housing ladder that at the moment can't afford a car, let alone somewhere to live. But they want to contribute to society. They want to work in the shops, in bars, in the offices, in the city centre. So I think it's important to recognise that these are not necessarily going to be forever homes. These are homes that let people get on that ladder, and they will choose either to own a car or not. And the parking spaces will be allocated on that basis. But for those that choose not to own a car, they'll have access to those car club spaces where through an app they book it and it will take them. So midweek, they might only go into the city centre and back. Weekend, they might want to visit someone, they book a car club and off they go. And that is a very affordable model.
Could I just add to the question about the car club? So you're proposing to put the car on a particular space on the street, is that right? Have you had discussions with Hampshire County Council about this? Because as has been pointed out, this will require a particular application to the County Council. And are they going to be supportive of that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes, indeed. With 3 minutes, it's always difficult what we can and cannot squeeze into that. Hampshire County Council have been consulted. There is ample space because it's currently double yellow line. There are places that have been identified, and there's a contribution towards the traffic regulation order. It's called a contribution, but it actually will pay for that process. That will deallocate the double yellow lines and put in that additional space on the street. And that has been assessed already in terms of that it doesn't interfere with any existing sight lines or highway safety.
Thank you. More questions, members? Yes, Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. There is 50% affordable dwellings on site. Can you please detail the number of parking spaces allocated to the market housing and allocated to the affordable, please?
Certainly. So it is likely that the parking will be allocated, first of all, on the basis of those 3-bed units. They will have a space, and then it will be down to the 2 beds, and the 1 beds will likely not be allocated a space. And like I said, there will be the sort of first home, starter home, someone that just needs to get on that ladder. So it will be a mix, but it is very much designed that the 1-bed units, where typically it would be for younger people that are just starting out in life, that will not be allocated a space.
Thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much. Just further in regards to affordability of the homes, what sort of provision would be sort of shared ownership, social rent, or is that still yet to be confirmed?
That's a good question. So it's a policy compliant mix. The 10% additionality, I may defer to Abri to answer that if you're willing.
Do you want to come forward to the microphone so that everybody can hear?
Thank you, Sam. Sam Stone from Abri.
Hi there. Thank you. I'm the Land and Planning Director from Abri. So the additional 10% is all proposed as shared ownership. So it's rented as per policy compliance, and then for the within the 40%, so that part is rented and shared ownership policy compliant. The additional is shared ownership.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, I have one more. It's not in regards to affordability though.
Okay.
So there is a secure cycle storage. I just wanted to clarify the number of spaces for cycle storage that there would be.
Thank you. We refer to it as a car hub, sorry, cycle hub, in that it is 1, attractive, 2, ultra convenient. It is 1-for-1 plus additionals, and I'm just going to refer to Matthew on that. It is.
Six. So I can answer if you want me to.
Yes, please, Megan. Thank you.
64 cycle spaces.
Yeah.
64.
Yeah, so that's 2 per.
2 per flat.
I know we went over, but the scale of it, I've forgotten in my head. Thank you. Thank you, Megan.
Councillor Godfrey.
I'm hoping you'll be able to answer this rather than the officer. Over 106 dwellings per hectare density is great if you're trying to make good use of land, but it does lead to small flats. What size of a flat that are being proposed?
Thank you. Flats are not as small as you might think. They're actually designed to be accessible. They are compliant with building control, and they're compliant with the modern space standards. They do vary. It's obviously a design with L form, so they vary in size. So I couldn't pick to one, but they are compliant. They are designed to be accessible. And I know on the face of it, that might sound high in terms of 106 DPH, but this is an urban centre. And I think we've alluded to it already, but if we cannot achieve such densities here, then we have to roll out more green fields. And I don't think that's popular either. So this is a brownfield development, and it is a brownfield density.
Okay, thank you very much. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, if I can just clarify on that as well. Part of our funding that we get from Homes England as part of a strategic partner, we have to deliver our homes to nationally described space standards. So it's a standard across the country, the minimum standard for sizes, but it also looks at storage as well. So they're not small apartments.
But not small means they have to exceed 35 square meters. Are they in excess of 35 square meters?
Definitely in excess of 35 square meters. That is quite small.
Good. I think we're done with questions of clarification, aren't we, members? Thank you very much indeed. If you could just switch that microphone off as you go. Thank you. Right. Megan, we come back to you. Do you have any further contributions before we come to questions on the report?
Yes, Chair, I'd like to just clarify that last point in terms of the floor areas of the apartments. It's approximately one-bedroom apartments are about 50 metres squared in size. The 2-bedroom ones are 70 and the 3 bedrooms are approximately 90. So they all exceed standards and they exceed our planning policy as well.
And presumably if they're all accessible, there's a lift up to the 2nd floor, is there?
Yes, there's a lift provided, yes.
Wheelchair friendly lift.
Yeah, there's accessible flats within the apartments that are required.
Good. Okay, so now we move to questions on the report, members. We'll take questions on the whole. I'm sorry, you've had your opportunity. Thank you. If you could just hold off now. Questions on the report, members. Councillor White.
So it's regarding the 50% affordable housing that's provided. We're being asked to give significant weight to that aspect of it. So can we be sure that that will remain the same as in the course of this development, that that's not going to change or be downsized to slightly less? Or
no, that is going to be written into the section 106 and the decision will not be given until that 106 has been signed. So it will be secured under that.
Councillor Godfrey.
Given this is quite a development on quite a prominent position on top of a ridge, the height of the proposed development, how does that compare both with the existing structure and neighbouring structures? Is it a reasonable change?
There is an increase in height from the existing to the proposed, as you can see in this slide here. I haven't got the exact measurements of the existing, but the proposed varies from between 11 to 12.5 metres in height, which is equal or if not the same or slightly different by 0.5 metre to Pinehurst Close, which is to the west of the site.
Any more questions, members? Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. When we were on site yesterday, we noticed that the paddle court was quite noisy. I just wonder, have we done a noise assessment on how that will affect the flats?
So there's quite a lot in the update sheet actually about the noise from the paddle courts, and I believe it's subject to a legal challenge at the moment, but perhaps the officer can give us more information.
That is correct. So the update sheet clarifies the points made by the our environmental protection team. So when the application first came in, there was not a concern regarding the paddle courts, but subsequently there has been a noise nuisance looked into from the neighbouring properties, and we're going to serve a notice, abatement notice, to the paddle tennis court. And as a result, in this application, we are asking for a noise report to cover any noise impact to those residents.
Could I ask about deliveries to this site? So the whole idea is that people shouldn't own cars, and therefore there's going to be an awful lot more deliveries to the site. Is there sufficient space for that to happen are we confident that that will be an acceptable solution to the problem of no cars?
There is, as you can see on this plan, there's a turning for those vehicles within the site. So I'm satisfied that there is enough space, yes.
Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions. One relates to accessibility. The floor plans are not terribly clear. They're a bit fuzzy. I can't see a lift.
No, I'm sorry, I
and
need to clarify that. There isn't a lift, but there are accessible apartments on the ground floor.
Okay, thank you. And my
Meet the
second question relates to the site visit yesterday. I appreciate that there are conditions referenced the noise, but when we were on the visit, there were a lot of balls, and I'm concerned about the nuisance that the balls might cause to residents. Is there something that we can condition with regards to that?
I suppose in a broader sense, we just need to look at the compatibility of those two uses next to each other and make your mind up about it. And then it might be a case of neighbourliness. They do have a high fence up at the moment, but it's clearly not high enough. So I don't think that's something that we can probably help to mitigate as a sort of a major planning land use impact in this case. But it would be for the management of both owners. Have you got anything else you think you could contribute to that, Dan?
I think also, Councillor, this is subject to noise abatement matters. So it may well be that the adult court might be reconfigured. So that may alleviate any potential ball issues. As far as anticipating any sort of issue with balls, it happens in neighbouring gardens, for example, in terraces. Is it really a planning concern? It's a really matter for you. But be mindful that when you make your decision, it is subject to abatement matters, and that may result in the paddle courts being reformulated, rejigged in some way, shape or form. It's a tricky one. It's not really one that we normally are faced with, dealing with balls over fences or balls over hedges. It's really a matter for you as to whether or not you feel that creates such harm to warrant a reason for refusal.
There is a boundary condition as well as part of the application, so we haven't decided exactly what's going on that boundary yet.
Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you. Obviously, the presentations earlier from those opposing the development focused on the inadequate parking being proposed in this application. I assume that because it does not meet the standard parking requirements, but the inadequate level of parking would be a reasonable reason for refusal, should we choose to do so. And if that's the case, how are we allowed to ignore one of our own standards to permit an application which clearly does not meet that required standard? Either we have a local plan with the requisite level of targets and standards to meet, that we should abide by, and we can't bend those rules in the middle of a meeting, or we don't. So, one, is it a genuine, is it an adequate reason for refusal, but for inadequate parking? And two, are we allowed to bend the rules?
Councillor Godfrey, I think the officer will be able to explain in great detail why they are recommending acceptance of this substandard parking level in this case. But you're wrong to say that it's a red line. You know, it's not, and there are mitigating circumstances which can affect the level of parking. It's a recommendation, it's not an absolute. So, but I will pass on as I understand it, and I will pass on to the officers for their official answer. Thank you.
So policy D18 of our local plan part 2 does require developments to meet the parking standards as set out in our policies, and this doesn't meet those standards. It does, however, provide a very sustainable location for new dwellings, and that is set out within my report on page 34 regarding the location of facilities within the vicinity of the site. So it's very close to an existing bus stop, which has a bus service every 15-20 minutes into the city centre. It's walking distance to the train station. It's close. I've got a map actually, I can show you. It's close to a number of schools. So the squares, red squares are schools. 2 primary schools, secondary school, and Peter Symonds College along the road, so they're all within walking distance. You've got the green triangles, which are local parks, which are close walking distance, and the blue circle is the bus stop. So you can see it's in a very sustainable location. Also, there is additional parking for cycle storage, undercover cycle storage on the site, and therefore I think this in this instance is acceptable. We also look at the direction of travel with our emerging local plan, looking to not reduce those parking standards, remove them entirely, and it will be a case by case assessment of each site. Thank you.
Chair, can I just put that, so Megan's talked about the characteristics of the site, but just to put it slightly broadly into the development plan context as well. Looking at the NPPF revisions, it's not just about does it meet the car parking standards, it's if it doesn't, what is the harm, which we always take you back to. And in this case, you'd have to illustrate that there was a severe, and that is the word that is in the NPPF, a severe impact on the safety of vehicular users, so that because there's not enough space on, you'd have to have the evidence base to prove that the number of cars which would perhaps overspill onto the roads would be of such detriment and perhaps choke up those roads that it would interrupt that free flow of traffic to the point where you'd perhaps have car or user safety at risk. So you'd have to be able to illustrate that. We also gave it some minimal weight in the emerging plan, which Councillor Rutter set out earlier in terms of the direction of travel. You've got 2 elements there which clearly say that if it's not meeting the parking standards, that's acceptable. If it's well located, which Megan has shown you how it is well located, Winchester is one of the sort of really sustainable places in our district, and this area is one in particular. And secondly, if there's no parking at all in the emerging plan, you would also start to, I've got that wrong the wrong way actually. If there's less than the parking standards, you start to look at the types of development. So flatter development on page 34, it does point out that that's a sort of use that might have less car use anyway. And then you could also have no parking as part of the emerging plan if it's well located. So whilst we've given that limited weight, it is an important factor. And whilst that's in the emerging local plan with weight, it is actually quite a weighty issue in itself now anyway, in terms of looking at sustainable development. So just focus on what would be the severe impacts if you didn't have an extra, there's a calculation there, an extra, is it an extra 20 spaces on the sites for those users? Thank you.
I think, Chair, before we move on as well, I think the question was, can we break the rules in relation to parking? Your duty, you're tasked to look at the local plan. Now, the actual law says if regard is to be had to the development plan for the purposes of any determination to be made under the acts, so the planning acts, the determination must be made in accordance with the plan unless material considerations suggest otherwise. Now, what does that actually mean in accordance with the plan? Case law has helped, if you like, shape what your duties are when you come to look at in accordance with the plan. And it simply says the sum of it, there's a lot there, but the sum of it is the duty can only be properly performed whether or not you look at the plan as a whole, not just one discrete particular policy that's engaged, but you've got to look at it in light of the plan as a whole document. Case law also suggests that development plan policies can also pull in different directions. So it may not be in accordance with this particular policy. It may actually conflict wholly with that policy. It may meet some of those policies. It might just marginally meet that policy. So you've got to look at the fact that, yes, policies can pull in different directions. but you're required to assess the proposal against the requirements of those competing policies and decide whether, in light of the plan as a whole, you feel it does or does not accord with it, remembering the initial test that it must be in accordance with. So you're tasked to look at all of these policies and decide where it pulls, where it conflicts, and come to a decision. Now, the case officer here has put significant weight on certain elements that we've heard about, the affordable housing provision, for example. That's obviously the assessment from the case officer. You, as a committee, can put weight elsewhere. And if you decide that the parking is too big a conflict, then yes, it could be a reason for refusal if you're minded to go down that road. However, be mindful that there's more weight being put by the officer here on the affordable housing provision. So that's what you're charged to do, is look at that exercise and decide whether or not it's in accordance with the plan as a whole, not just one specific policy conflict.
Thank you for that clarification, officers. Okay. Any more questions, members? I did have a question. Oh yes, it was about the marketing. Condition 22 talks about the parking management plan. Is that sufficient, do we think, to ensure that the marketing of the flats makes it absolutely clear that most of the flats that will not have any parking provision with them? Is there an extra condition we could or should put in that affects the so that we can make it absolutely clear that people with a car shouldn't be buying these flats or renting these flats because there will not be provision for their parking? Because all at the moment we have is the parking management plan.
The parking management plan has been updated in the update sheet, and I think that beefs it up sufficiently in that it asks for that extra detail and shall include the allocation of bays for the housing sold with permission to park. So it has that detail that we require in there. So I think that is sufficient, yes.
Okay, thank you. So that's the update sheet beefs up condition 22. Perfect, thank you. Right, if we have no, Councillor Ashwell.
Sorry, just going back to the car parking. I noticed in here it's mentioning the electric car parking spaces. How many are there? What's the proposal? It doesn't actually say. Is it 1, 2?
I think it says an electric charging point, but
I think there is one, yes, and it's been conditioned. It meets our standards.
Right, if there are no more questions, we will move to debate. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's a difficult application on balance, especially in regards to parking, which I'll touch on a little bit later. Comparing this to the previous application, I very much welcome this design rather than the previous one. Certainly, the previous design was quite imposing on the street scene and quite damaging towards the eastern boundary of the site. So I welcome that. I also welcome the 50% affordable housing inclusion, especially the which isn't mentioned quite a lot when we sort of consider these types of applications, but the accessibility provision on the ground floor for the flats as well. Going back to sort of towards the parking, I think the majority of the members here sort of represent rural areas, so it's very difficult for us to sort of consider, and we have done in the past, and every time it comes up, it's difficult to consider, well, where's the parking space for these people? But it is in the city centre. There is provision for bus and sustainable transport. I welcome the provision of the cycling. Cycling spaces as well, and I still do have concerns around this car club and whether it will actually work with just being sort of one detailed there in the scheme. there are concerns obviously in regards to noise. However, it is not a noise as a result of this planning application, and it is off-site, which is subject to a legal challenge. Unfortunately, we can't consider sort of noise as part of this planning application. So overall, I think I'm willing to support this application. I still do have concerns in regards to parking, but again, that's coming from a rural mindset whereby to get any food, you have to drive. But considering all the sustainability in regards to transport, I will be supporting this application.
Thank you. Councillor Clear.
Thank you, Chair. I am very pleased with the affordable housing. Very good. And the new design. I too have concerns about the car club parking, but I must say my main concern is parking. And I thank Mr. Lucas who has advised us. But however, you can't get away from the fact that the lack of parking for residents and visitors to the flats, to my mind, is a major concern. It does not provide parking in accordance with relevant standards and the needs of the development for cars and other vehicles, and it is against policy DM18. And it's against our parking standards. And I'm sorry, but why do we have these parking standards and policies if we're not going to adhere to them? So I'm sorry, on those problems alone, I am not supporting this application.
Councillor White.
So yes, there is limited parking, but regarding the harm that would be caused, as we mentioned earlier, I don't think that outweighs the benefits of this development in terms of the affordable housing, the sustainable transport that we're trying to encourage. It's a good use of the existing site. The amendments to the design have limited the effect on the neighbouring amenity. So on balance, yes, there is potentially limited parking, but I don't think that outweighs the other benefits.
Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chair. I think the planning officer has done a really good job on this and encouraged the amendments to make it look more attractive. I think that the biggest problem is the parking. We know that places not so far from there have got limited parking, and it causes all sorts of problems with visitors and everything else. You've also got the problem that if somebody has been living there and they suddenly need to have a mobility car and they haven't got a parking space, how is that coped with? We have the government encouraging everybody to have electric vehicles, yet there's only one parking space with a charging point, where all the spaces should have a charging point in modern facilities. We know that Berwick Road is quite a congested road, and there are accident hot spots along that particular stretch of road. So I don't know where people would park on the road or the adjacent roads. And that really is a big stumbling block for me, because I can see this creating harm in the area. But I will listen to what everybody else has to say before coming to a conclusion.
Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I'm conflicted on this application. We are seeing increasing pressure on land throughout the district, and I think that we will be seeing a significant rise in developments of this sort over many floors and possibly even high-rise buildings in the future. I'm appreciative of the provision of affordable housing in this development. It is in a highly sustainable location, and if we can get away with not having parking provision on site, then this is most definitely one of those locations. I also appreciate that it is redevelopment of brownfield and therefore avoiding loss of further greenfield sites. However, I am really concerned about parking because we are still very reliant on use of cars. So I will, at this point, listen further to debate.
Well, perhaps I can put in my contribution to debate here. All planning applications are a balance. And what we have here has been pointed out as a brownfield site. It's an eyesore at the moment. The building is not used, has been empty for some time, cannot be used because it's just not big enough, not viable as a nursing home, even if redeveloped as a nursing home. So we have the option of having flats. Now, in terms of sustainable positions within the city, this is about as sustainable as they come. Outside of the tiny city centre, the historic area. So if not here, then where are we going to put our sustainable homes of the future? We have a very strong policy, and our direction of travel in planning terms is towards active travel, sustainable locations, 20-minute neighbourhoods, and away from car use, particularly in the city centre. And this gives us an opportunity to demonstrate that we take that direction of travel literally and very seriously. There is proper provision for safe, secure cycle storage. There are parks within easy walk. There are shops within easy walk. And this will give us not only 16 affordable homes, either for rent or shared ownership, but another 16 homes to allow our young people to stay in the area, students who are going to be contributing to our communities, doctors, nurses, police, all those sorts of people who at the moment find it very difficult to afford to live in the city can move here, and they won't have the expense of maintaining a car, so they'll be able to afford to buy the flats or rent the flats or whatever. So from my point of view, the sustainability of this site means that it is a perfect position to encourage people into active travel and our walking and 20-minute walking city that we all want to see. I have taken on board the concerns of neighbours. We have addressed the noise issue. It's subject to a legal challenge at the moment anyway, but we have asked for a noise report as well as one of our extra conditions. I think the officers have worked incredibly hard to get a design which, whilst it makes the most of this site, and it's a difficult site to develop, is still attractive and will not, I don't think it will detract from the neighbourhood at all. In terms of design, I think it's well designed. So bearing all that in mind, and bearing in mind that the increasing pressure on us to provide more homes, I don't think that we will be in a position in planning terms to turn this down. This is a perfect site to bend the rules on our parking provision and to say, this is a great sustainable site. You will not need a car here. And the Enterprise Car Club, which has been mentioned, if there is more demand for that than it can provide, I would think that the market will decide that another car club space will come forward. So, and similarly with the electric charging point, I'm sure that can be addressed easily enough. So I will certainly be supporting the officer's recommendation. Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do start from a position of having lived in the countryside or in villages for the last 30 years. And I use a car almost every day. My daughters who live in Micheldever, they work in the NHS and social care. They use their car to get to work, and they couldn't do it otherwise. However, my son lives in Southampton and doesn't have a car. And I think we have to bear in mind that people live where they want to live, generally, or where they can afford to live. And although flats here would not attract me under almost any circumstance, because there wouldn't be a car space, there wouldn't be the amenities, the open spaces immediately by my dwelling that I would want. I'm not working anymore, so I don't need to get to work. If my daughters lived there, they would be able to get to the hospital very easily. And that would perhaps suit them. So perhaps there is a case for accepting a compromise in that the parking is inadequate. It's a real challenge. Here we've got shopping close by, where people don't need to get on a bus to go shopping, because people don't really do proper shopping on the bus. They can get into town, they can get to the station. It's in a well-designed proposal, which is not significantly different in height or mass to neighbouring buildings. It retains some of the features of the Berwick Road, of the tall, mature trees, and I hope those are retained forever. I'm doubtful, as others are, that the car club provides any significant solution to the parking problem, although I fully support the notion. But we do need more housing in the district. We do need to protect our countryside. And so rather than building on the open green fields, it's better to use brownfields effectively with high density developments in the city centre than to allow the pressure to build out away from where people want to live, and accept that that may have consequences in terms of parking and the density of people's dwellings. So I will support this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Godfrey. Any further contributions, members, to debate? No? So we move to the decision. This application is recommended for permission. So can I see all those in favour, please?
7, Chair.
And those against?
2, Chair.
Okay, so that application is approved. We'll now move on to the next application, number 7. We'll have a short break whilst the officers change. Right, members. If we could move on to the next item on our agenda, please. Members, if we could just settle down, please. So the next item on our agenda, number 7, is an application for a dog walking facility at land adjacent to the Running Horse, Littleton. And our presenting officer is Cameron Taylor. Over to you, Cameron.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this application is for the change of use for a dog walking site used by the public for commercial use, which includes the erection of fencing, new hard stand for vehicle parking and turning, and the retention of stable bin for storage and any other associated works. Here have the location and the existing site plan, with the site currently marked with the red outline. I'll just highlight the blue, which is also in ownership of the applicant themselves. I'll note the nearest residential property of St Swithin to the north of the site itself, which is a listed building, along with the Running Horse pub for reference at the southern side of the site where the cursor is, and also along Main Road as well, which just runs along to the east. The right-hand photo shows the existing site plan, where I'll just highlight the existing stable building along the eastern boundary where the mouse currently is. Next, we have an aerial photograph with the site marked by the yellow triangle. The development to the south, that's the Littleton settlement, along with the settlement then to the north is where this continuation of the Littleton settlement, however, that is where the conservation area is located. Next, we have the site plan. I'll just note this has been updated from the pack as these have been amended plans, which just includes the relocation of the parking, which on the original plans was shown to be at the left-hand side. They have now been moved to the northeast corner. So the access to the site would utilise the existing access and driveway to the Barclays, which again, that's in ownership of the applicant, along an existing gate, and then continue up along the northern boundary to the parking. The dotted line indicates that in which the area is to be enclosed with a 1.2 to 1.4 metre timber post and wire fence, along with other facilities, say dog waste bins, and then the pedestrian gates around the site and also into the site itself. I'll just note the distance to the rear of the St Swithin's cottage from the point is around 48 metres from where the mouse currently sits, and then the gap from where the mouse currently is to the northern boundary of the site is around 15 metres. And to the south, the distance from the area of the fencing to the boundary ranges from around 2 metres point, the southern point here, to around 4 metres along this eastern point. Next, we have some photos. These are looking along the access to the site itself. The top left-hand photo is looking from Main Road itself, looking up the driveway towards the access to the site. With the right-hand photo being at where that gate access is, looking down towards Main Road itself. And the bottom left-hand photo is looking into the site again from that gate access, where I'll just highlight that on the little plan down in the bottom right, which is around here. Next are the photos from along the northern boundary itself. The top left one looks back towards the site, looks back towards Barclays and the Holiday Let down the access. The top right is from within the area of the access itself, looking towards the east, where you've got the small stable building. And the bottom left one is looking more towards the south, towards the pub of the Running Horse, which you can see just along there. The next photo is looking towards the northern boundary. Well, note the top left one is looking towards the property of St Swithin's, with this structure here being the structure in the back of their garden. The top right one, continuing to look along the northern boundary, is looking towards this paddock here, where the mouse currently is on the plan. Again, and the bottom left one is also looking towards that similar location, but more towards the east. Now we have some photos which are looking to the west, from more along sort of to the eastern section of the site. Again, we can see the Holiday Let, which is ownership of the Barclays, with the top right photo being that of the mature vegetation, which runs along Main Road itself, along the site's western boundary, followed by the bottom left photo, which again is looking towards the pub of the Running Horse. Next, we have some photos which are actually taken from within the Running Horse car park. The top left one is a bit more of a wide one to give the full context of the site itself, where I'll just highlight the property of the Barclays there, on the left-hand side of the photo, along with mature vegetation along Main Road. And the top right-hand photo is also more directed towards the vegetation, which runs alongside the western boundary to Main Road itself, with the dwelling Barclays located there just on the right-hand side of said photo. Followed by the bottom left-hand photo, which is now looking towards the east, where I'll just highlight the stables to be used as storage. Next, we have some photos looking to the north along the south of Main Road from the access to the site and Barclays. The top left photo is that looking to the north, further into the conservation area, whilst the photo on the right is that looking up to the south, which then looks towards the Running Horse pub. I've just put the bottom left-hand photo to just give an idea of where these photos were taken with relation to the car. Thank you very much. That concludes my presentation, with the officer's recommendation being for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. We now turn to the public speaking on this matter. And first we have the Parish Council representative, Councillor Biddlecombe. Good morning, Councillor Biddlecombe. If you'd like to come forward, you will have 3 minutes from when you start speaking. And the microphone is turned on by pressing the button on the base of the unit. So when you're ready, up to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a councillor for the Littleton and Hairstock Parish Council, and I'd like to emphasise a couple of reasons contained in our submitted objection to the application. The section of Main Road onto which the access road to the site is situated is an extremely dangerous piece of road, especially for pedestrians and cyclists. It has no pavements, it is a narrow carriageway, no grass verge for refuge, and overgrown hedgerows which encroach upon the road. We've been made aware of a number of incidents where cars have collided with pedestrians, pedestrians have been hit by car wing mirrors, and pedestrians have had to scramble on verges to avoid a collision. A couple of years ago, the parish councils entered into extensive discussions with Hampshire County Council. We put forward a number of suggestions to try to make the road safer, but the Hampshire County Council deemed that none were possible for technical reasons, whatever they may be. The only option which they would suggest was the provision of a bus gate. That is, they actually close the road to all vehicles other than a bus, a lot obviously with pedestrians and cyclists. Quite simply, the parish council felt that this was an unviable situation, as it would seriously affect the social and economic structure of the village. We are of the opinion that the increase in traffic movements resulting from this proposal will increase the risk of further accident and injury in this stretch of road. The Littleton Village Design Statement was adopted by yourselves on the 4th of September 2023 as a supplementary planning document. It's also been referenced in your proposed district plan, which is currently under consideration by the Inspectorate. It contains matters which, if permission is granted, the application permit will be contrary to the VDS. 7.8 refers to the section of road to which I've spoken above, i.e. safety of pedestrians. The applicant's site is outside of the development boundary, as shown on our map. The piece of land is specifically mentioned in A10 of the VDS in that it forms a settlement gap between the old medieval conservation area and the 20th century Littleton settlement, as shown on our maps. It states that the development which would damage this setting should be resisted. As you are aware, villages are encouraged to prepare village design statements and have them adopted as supplementary planning documents. The purpose of the VDS is to help maintain, protect and enhance the village of Littleton, its rural setting, character and distinctive features. And the Parish Council feel that if this application is permitted, it will totally go against those principles of the village design statement.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
That's the end of your 3 minutes. Thank you for your time. If you could just wait and see if members have got any questions of clarification. Councillor Godfrey.
I have 2 points about the submission made by the Parish Council, if I may. Firstly, the proposal before us What do you believe will be damaged in the setting of the conservation area by this proposal?
It will basically be, at the moment, it is just open meadowland, as we've seen from the presentation. But we feel that the change of use will encourage further, with vehicles going in and out, it will become a semi-industrial, for want of a better word, area, and that it will be encouraging more commercial use as opposed to being a rural area.
And my second question was in the submission the Parish Council made, they made reference to a dog walking area supported by the Parish Council. Could you tell me where that is?
Well, we've got a very large recreation ground, which virtually adjacent to the site. It's over the back of it. We have regular dog walkers there all the time. There's probably more dog walkers than there are anybody else goes in there. We've got a large car park, as you know, is used. We do monitor people, not intently, or the only thing that we actually try to do is try to informally keep walkers with no more than 3 dogs. And that's all we do. But it is there. It's open 24 hours a day. It's managed by the Parish Council. It's a public open space.
Thank you, Councillor Godfrey. Thank you very much for that. Any further questions, members? No? If you could switch the microphone off and return. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you, Councillor. And finally, we have 2 supporters, Richard Osborne and Nick Culhane. If you'd like to come forward. Thank you. Now you have up to 3 minutes between you. I'll leave it to you to decide who's going to speak. And the microphones are turned on by pressing the button on the base. When you are ready, you have up to 3 minutes.
Chair, thank you. Good morning. My name's Richard Osborne from Winchester-based Provision, acting on behalf of the applicant. With me, I've transport consultant Nick Culhane to answer any highways questions, if you have any in due course. The proposal seeks permission for the change of use of a field currently used for the grazing of horses to a secure area that can be booked on an hour-by-hour basis for dog walking. The purpose of the secure dog walking park is to provide a safe and controlled environment to exercise dogs by providing an enclosed outdoor space that minimises external stimulation, such as other animals, passers-by, that otherwise may occur on public land. The existing access will be retained. We've listened to the concerns raised by the Parish Council and worked closely with officers and consultees to overcome them. Dogs are generally more excitable on arrival, and therefore, through collaboration with officers, a gated parking area has been relocated to the northeast corner of the site, away from neighbouring amenity, in order to minimise the impact of visitors getting in and out of cars. A secondary inner fence will be erected to create an enclosure. This will be in excess of 10 metres from the existing boundary to create a further buffer. A noise survey prepared by Clark Saunders Acoustics demonstrates that predicted noise levels are likely to be similar to existing and ambient background noise levels. Use will be limited to 1 booking and a maximum of 4 dogs at any given time. The applicant has reduced the proposed hours of use to between 8 AM and 6 PM during weekdays and 8 AM and 1 PM on Saturdays. These hours will allow a maximum of 10 bookings per day during the weekdays if booked to capacity. A transport assessment prepared by Nick concludes that this level of activity will not have a material adverse impact on the safe functioning of the highway. This is consistent with the Highway Authority's position on approximately 7 recent applications in the district for the same sort of development. Adequate visibility can be delivered and the retention of splays are secured by condition. Ultimately, there is no objection from highways, no objection from environmental health, no objection from heritage, landscape or ecology. Accordingly, your officer has provided a thorough report concluding with a clear recommendation for approval, which we support. If there are any questions, we'd be happy to field those now.
Thank you. Any questions of clarification, members? Can I just ask about the surface that's going to be used in the car parking area?
I believe the details are secured by condition, but I imagine it will be a hardcore with a gravel surface.
I think we'll probably want a permeable surface. Is that right, Cameron?
Yes, just ensure there won't be any sort of potential runoff issues as a result.
And have we conditioned dealing with waste and so on? I can't see a condition for the well, I'll ask that later. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Godfrey.
The existing structure of stables are to be used for storage. Storage of what?
There's nothing proposed particularly. I mean, it's shown as storage and as a rain cover for users if in the event of rain. They're there at the moment. There's no need to remove them. Storage could be any number of things associated with the dogs, but not commercial storage if that's the where you're going with that.
Well, it is, because obviously, you know, storage is storage, or whatever it is you want to store in there. But why do you need permission to store anything in there if you're not going to store anything in there?
That could be removed from the permission if it's important. It's simply the building is there at the moment. It's a small stable building. It's a rain shelter, and it could be used for storing anything that the applicant wants to associate with a business, but it's not commercial, what we'd say B8 storage. It would still retain its existing use.
Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just have a question about the height of the fence. The fence is in the information says it's 1.2 metres. Having been an owner of Great Danes, my dog would just hop over that. So what was the rationale behind the 1.2 metres? Thank you.
I think the plans say 1.4. I don't know if any other information says 1.2, but we're proposing 1.4 metre fences. If that's deemed insufficient, then again, the condition requires details of the fencing to be provided, and that can be explored further if necessary.
I'd like to add
Yeah,
quickly in regards to the fencing.
Hold on to that, then we'll, yeah. If that's the end of our questions of clarification for the applicants, thank you very much indeed, gentlemen. You may return to your seats. Now we come to Cameron, if you'd like to give us updates. Thank you.
Yeah, with regards to the fencing, on the plans, it notes as being 1.4. In the planning statement, it says 1.2 to 1.4. So I guess that confusion might have come from, but it's within that range. But on the plans, it's shown to be 1.4. But if it's considered, it might need to be tall for whatever reason. I say we have got condition 3, which requires the details of the fence, including materials, which may be able to amend that if need be.
Okay, thank you. And was there anything else you wanted to add before we go to members' questions?
And there's nothing further I'd like to add. No, thank you, Chair.
So can I start questions then with hours of use? I thought I saw a condition about hours of use and now I can't see it. So have we conditioned the hours of use? And if not, can we condition them as the applicant has just said that they're proposing to do it? Because that sounded reasonable.
Yes, I believe it's because within condition, I believe it's caught within section of condition 4, or no, section 4.2, which highlights the hours of use, which I believe were considered acceptable by our environmental health officer. So it's caught under that within the recommendations on the condition 4.
Okay, good. So we won't have that suddenly changing at all, no. And can you just confirm the speed limit at the access?
So the road itself is noted as being 30 miles an hour. I believe within the transport assessment, I can't unfortunately remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but I think they said it was noted to be between 28 and 30 was the speed limit they found to be at that access when they undertook their speed survey.
And the parish council representative was concerned that the village design statement appeared to be being ignored. Can you just respond to that?
Yes, with regards to that section, whilst yes, there is some element of with regards to the fencing. However, that's quite what you'd expect or within this type of paddock as well. Any type of fencing with timber posts, wire mesh fences. They say condition 3 is just to ensure that it is acceptable within the rural location, but we consider that to not go against what is within the village design statement.
Thank you. Councillor White.
Is there a condition that there's only one booking per hour? And in the next one, there's a condition about there needs to be a 5-minute sort of crossover period between each booking. And I don't know if that is the same with this one.
But I say again, that one is somewhat caught under the condition 4, where it notes within their acoustic assessment, where it notes a maximum of 4 dogs at any one time. However, it just notes followed by a changeover period, but I don't believe it notes the exact time within that. But I'm sure that can be added if members feel it necessary in order to sort of cover the changeover period between groups.
I think it would be good to have the same conditions for both applications, actually, if that's possible. Okay, I think members are agreed with that. Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you. I have several questions for the officer. In the report, it's mentioned several times that dog walking is considered to be has an operational need for countryside location. Where is this consideration? Where is this considered to be necessary? Because all the dog walking I do is either on country lanes or in village or city parks.
I believe it's with regards to just sort of within these types of developments where there's an enclosed space, there's that need for, let's say, open grass space in order to allow for the dogs to get ample sort of space for them to run around. I do note with that previous appeal in which the inspector also agreed with that, they consider that such use has the need for a countryside location for that. I say it's not just restricted to being within settlement boundaries.
Sorry, you in the report you authoritatively state that it is considered. Who considers it? Where is that written down?
Could you just be specific which part of the report? I wasn't quite sure.
Principles of development. The proposal seeks a use for a dog walking site which is considered to be a use that has operational need for a countryside location.
Your officers are considering that in terms of the type of use that it is. You couldn't put this in a settlement, for example, the site we just looked at, for example. The agent has explained where this market demand is coming from, and then it's up to yourselves to decide if you think this is something that's commensurate with these sort of more rural areas or rural villages, to provide for dog walking where people have dogs that perhaps they don't feel comfortable having dogs socialising in more public areas, or whether this is not the right location for it. The policies, there isn't a specific policy on this because it's quite a new need that's grown up. Need isn't specifically something that you should be looking at anyway. But we are saying that it falls within the general thrust of the policies that are in our local plan.
But within the parish, there are 2 secure dog walking areas already open to the public, neither of which are in the countryside. So why does this one have an operational need for a countryside location?
Part of the policy and part of what we do, we're not comparing to what else is there. We're not trying to make a market assessment of need for this particular use based on what other provisions there could be in the area. That isn't what you're are being asked to look at. It's about, is this use acceptable on this piece of land? Not, is it acceptable on this piece of land because there isn't any other unmet need that provides for it. That is not part of the assessment.
But MTRA 4 only allows development where there is an operational need for development in the countryside. And the officer states that it is considered, but there is a need. What is that need? Where is it stated? And why is it not something which has been not met by existing provision?
I don't think there's much more I can add to this. The MTRA4 was written in 2013. There has been a considerable change, and there always is in the planning system, to be quite flexible to providing for different market demands as those things arise, provided on those sites that there isn't harm. So then we have those specific policies that do provide for it. Operationally, this is, we've said it's sort of commensurate, I think, with the recreational type facilities and function of these spaces. Clear, you need for a dog park, you need an open space for dogs to run around in. I think it's as simple as that, really.
Okay, any further questions? Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you. What is dog walking? Does it include dog training? I'm concerned about the noise that might be generated by training gun dogs to whistle and to unnecessary noise. And is there something we ought to be controlling?
I think there is a condition that covers this, Councillor Godfrey.
So under condition 5, which requires a sort of a more detailed sort of management plan of it, it does include they could, and also limiting the noise for any noise making devices, and then it says i.e. whistles or sort of that, and say to try to reduce and mitigate that further.
I apologise if I didn't see that condition. The application doesn't seem to be making a significant range of changes to what is there or could reasonably be expected to be there. The fencing is not huge. The use of the stables is not particularly changing. Why does this application need to be submitted? What is going to be permitted by this, which couldn't just be permitted without an application?
Chair, I suspect that this site didn't have a use on it before. Is that right, Cameron? It would then default to agriculture. We determined that this is a material change in its operational function. It's a change of use based on its sort of facts and degree, that you're using that land fundamentally differently than what that land was used for before. So so that we are taking planning applications for this because of the impacts that it can have as well, which is what we're looking at in its facts and degree. You've got car trips, and then you've got potential noise, and then you've got some operational development that's associated with it.
And the conditions deal with all of that. Okay, so if there are no more questions on the report, we turn to debate. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I considered this application as Councillor Godfrey has described, as not a sort of significant change to what would be expected in a countryside location for sort of that use of land. However, because obviously it has become before us and it is a change of use from agricultural, I welcome all the conditions that have been put in regards to mitigate noise. Also, I mean, there was 3 of us from the committee that did a site visit yesterday morning as well, just to have a look at the site, and particularly the parking area changes that have been mentioned today. I mean, even if they were in the previous location, I mean, either location, that they are at the lowest end of the site as well, so sort of minimal visual impact on the site. So I'll be supporting this application.
Yes, if I could just echo that I support the amended plans. I do think it's a better solution to have the potentially slightly noisy sort of arrival time and so on as far away from the nearest cottage as possible. That's a good thing. You can't actually see any of that side of the field from the Running Horse pub, which is where we had a look from. So I'm with the conditions and with the extra condition that we talked about. I'm happy to support this application. Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Although initially there wouldn't necessarily be any significant changes to the environment, as Ms. Huntington said, it is a change of use and a development of that the use of the land, and this goes exactly against the intentions of the village design statement, a supplementary planning document that we adopted by this council, which seeks to preserve the setting of the adjacent conservation area, and I think that's. It would be very strange indeed that we allow a significant or potentially significant increase in the amount of vehicle movements running alongside the conservation area. 20 plus vehicle movements a day could be allowed up to the up the track to the parking area. To be stored, to allow storage in the existing stables area for whatever might be considered appropriate. To have people coming and going, lights and barking and the like. There is a risk of damage to the setting of the conservation area. There's also a risk of adverse effect on the leisure facility at the Running Horse, which has quite a number of very attractive holiday lets and accommodation adjacent to this field. We should not be trying to damaging the hospitality business by permitting something which is inappropriate and unnecessary. As I pointed out, over the fence from the application site, the Parish Council have provided a very good, very effective and well used and well controlled dog walking area in their sports area, including a fenced off area. So there's no need for this. There's a risk of a damage to the setting of the conservation area because we do not know what may develop over years. We should be protecting our countryside and not allowing unnecessary developments to occur.
Any further contributions to debate, members? No. So we move to the decision. Application is recommended for approval. Can I see all those in favour of approving this application, please?
That's 8, Chair.
And against?
1, Chair.
So that application is permitted. Thank you. We will now take a short break for coffee and return at shortly after 11:30. Thank you. Okay, members, thank you very much. So we now move to the next item on our agenda, item number 8, which is another dog walking area application, this time at land north of the avenue in Alresford. And we have Cameron Taylor presenting again. Thank you, Cam.
Thank you very much, Chair. So yes, this presentation is also for the change of use agricultural land sui generis for the use of secure dog walking site, along with the instalment of stock fencing to secure the area. Say the land to the north of the avenue in Alresford. Here we have the location and site plan, the left being the location plan, the site marked by the red outline, and say the blue outline just shows any additional ownership of the applicant. And the right-hand photo is that of the site plan, which shows the extent of the dog walking area. On the location plan, I'll just note that the access is proposed to go through the private access, which serves Albury Park Cottages and Owl Cottage, along with another set of residential dwellings, which are where the mouse currently is. But then it will go off into an existing agricultural access, just where the mouse currently sits. Here we have the aerial photograph of the site marked by the yellow triangle. I'll highlight again the residential dwellings just to the south of the site here where the mouse currently sits, with further residential dwellings located to the south and southwest. And also I'll note the Alresford recreation area, which includes the rugby pitches just where the mouse currently sits. Next we have the site layout plan, where the site, I say, the dot and dash line is that indicative of where they're proposing to put the 2-metre tall timber post and stock fencing. And where the mouse currently is, that is where the parking is proposed, which will be accessed from the existing agricultural access and an existing gate where the mouse is just at the bottom off the private access, which serves, I say, again, serves the dwellings of Old Park Cottage, Old Cottage itself, Albury Park Cottage, sorry, Old Park, and another set of residential dwellings for the southwest. And this line here just shows the boundary in which the site shares with those residential properties, with the proposed dog walking fencing being situated between 9 and 10 metres away from that boundary itself. Here we have a detailed plan for the access and parking. Again, I'll just highlight the number 1 at the bottom right of the plan. That is the existing access, the existing gate access, which will then go into the existing agricultural access into the paddock, which will then lead into the parking, which has that key on the right hand side to include bin bag disposal, water station, as well as a gate for the maintenance of the site, as well as a pedestrian access gate. And so the photos of the proposed site area. These are taken just from within that second access, which leads into the paddock. And for reference, within the top left and right hand photos, we can see 2 trees. I'll just go to the right hand photo, these 2 trees here, which on the plan are these 2 circled just at the western boundary of the dog walking area itself. And the bottom photo is that looking towards the northern boundary of the neighbouring properties, where they will, where they have the adjoining boundary with the site and the neighbouring properties. Next are the photos of the access gate and private driveway. Top left and top right are that looking towards the agricultural gate and access itself, with the bottom one looking down the private access towards the avenue, which is what would be proposed for the access to the site. Followed by photos within the agricultural access, which lead to the paddock. The top left-hand one is that just on the inside of that agricultural gate. Top right-hand one is that when you come and then you the access into the actual paddock site itself. And the bottom photo is that looking towards the east, towards the rugby pitches and the Alresford recreation grounds from within that agricultural access. Next, have photos which are looking across the neighbourhood. The top left one is that from the southern boundary of the neighbouring property of Albury Park Cottage, looking across the site of their eastern side of their property over towards the site itself. Well, I'll just note the tree and the vegetation mark the boundary between the neighbouring property and that of the site itself. And the top right hand photo again is that looking along the southern boundary of the site towards the neighbouring properties themselves. That concludes my presentation, with the office recommendation being for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. We now turn to our objectors, Mr. Blockley and Mr. Rooker-Roberts. Good morning. It's still morning, isn't it, just? You have up to 3 minutes between you. I think you've sorted out who's going to speak. And when you're ready, the 3 minutes will show up on the screen. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tim Blockley from Oldbury Park Cottage, adjacent land. Firstly, the Animal Welfare Officer recommended refusal due to noise and disturbance complaints from dog walking sites commonly received by this council. The report referenced the noise survey, which did not consider the difference between ambient background noise and the annoyance and disturbance that consistent dog barking will have on enjoyment of this tranquil area. 10 hours a day, 20 bookable slots, 4 dogs per slot. That's up to 80 dogs on the site in a day. How can this be considered not an adverse effect on our residential amenity? Our children and pets should be allowed to enjoy playing in our gardens in privacy, at times only 2 meters away from potentially aggressive and unpredictable dogs and owners, and the large car parking area at the bottom of our garden. Secondly, the site will be dark for some bookable hours in the winter. Condition 10 mentions external lighting in a building. What building, what lighting? Is this the intention? This will have an adverse effect, not only on the resident bats and other wildlife, but will also be a considerable disturbance to us residents. Thirdly, the potential safety risk to hundreds of pedestrians that use the footpath crossing the access point from the avenue to the entrance of Albury Park Barns has not been considered seriously. This is an accident waiting to happen. We've lived here for 10 years and regularly come across school children staring at their phones, children on bikes and scooters, dog walkers and the elderly that are totally unaware of the need to stop and watch the cars passing in and out of Albury Park Barns. Potentially an additional 11,000 car movements per year. Fourthly, the report states the site can be accessed without the need for further hard standing other than the car park. This is incorrect, as there's a large strip of land which is grass and that'll be chewed up and muddy within 2 or 3 days.
There'll be a significant adverse impact upon our and our neighbours' residential amenity and reasonable enjoyment and privacy of our property and garden. The site is proposed on the boundary to our property overlooking it, having an adverse and overbearing impact. This includes visual intrusion, loss of privacy and noise nuisance. WCC policy SP3 specifically states development in accordance with this policy should not create inappropriate, unacceptable noise, light and traffic generation. There is no buffer zone and there will be permanent and unrelenting increase in noise and traffic. Well-adjusted dogs are unlikely to need a paid dog walking facility. Unsociable dogs pose a hazard to the surrounding playing fields, children and elderly residents living in the neighbouring properties in our gardens. The lane is unsuitable for use by an estimated 5,000 vehicles per annum. Vehicles access the site via a private single lane from the avenue within the new Alresford Conservation Area. Hundreds of residents, including children, accessing the school opposite walk daily along this path, unlit path hidden by trees. The volume of traffic poses a real risk of unnecessary accidents. The environmental impact for endangered wildlife is of significant concern. The river valley has nature conservation value, which is not affected by agricultural use, but will be affected by increased traffic, human footfall and prey-driven dogs. There's already a facility of this type in close proximity in Alresford. The request to change the use of agricultural land is also suspected to be a gateway to further residential development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sticking within your 3 minutes. That's very good timing. Members, do we have any questions or clarification for our local residents? Presumably you've seen the report and the conditions that are attached to it. Do you think that those conditions do not address some of your concerns?
We appreciate the conditions. I think they need to go further if this committee agrees to move forward. There are certain things that we would like to see and we'd like to discuss further. That's my view on it.
I think regardless of any conditions.
Can you use your microphone? Sorry.
Apologies. I think regardless of any conditions that may be put on this application, the traffic risk in particular for me is of significant concern.
Thank you, gentlemen. If there are no more questions, you can return to your seats. Thank you. And now we have 2 ward councillors. Are you both here? Oh, yes, goodness. So we have Councillor Margot Power and Councillor Russell Gordon-Smith. Mr. Mayor, good morning. You have 5 minutes each, so I know. Please don't use it all. Please, if you've arranged to share 5 minutes, that would be delightful. But you do have 5 minutes each, should you require it. So over to you. Thank you.
Good morning. I would like to raise an objection against this application. I've been a long-term resident of Alresford, and through most of those 30 odd years, I've had dogs and walked in the area around Alresford. And one of the benefits of Alresford is you can be out of your house in open countryside very, very quickly. And I can attest to the virtues of dog walking for health for both the owner and the dog. Now, I think one of the main objections is the noise. And the planning statement says dog barking may be audible. This may be considered acceptable. To me, that sounds a very curious statement, totally unsubstantiated. My own experience of dogs at the start of a walk, especially as there's a group of them, they're very excited, running about and barking. And in fact, if you're driving somewhere to take the dogs for a walk, the dogs will start barking on the way there. So I think there's a scope for considerable noise and so on. And the contrasting statement by the council animal welfare officer is, I would say there is a large potential for noise nuisance. It is likely that undertrained and lively dogs will be let loose in the field, precisely the ones which will run around barking. And this is going to be happening throughout the day. I actually, where I live in Alresford, I'm next door to the co-op, and I hear dogs would have been tied up outside the co-op, and they very often are very distressed when the owner goes inside for just a short time. And through double glazed windows, I can hear the yapping and the barking, and it completely breaks one's concentration. So I think this statement, I think the council's animal welfare statement, there is a large potential for noise nuisance, is a very serious point. The other main reason for objecting is the traffic and the increase in traffic going up and down a private road several times a day. Now, I appreciate it's meant to be a 5-minute overlap between these different dog walking sessions, starting and finishing, but that seems a pretty tight and almost unenforceable. So you're going to get cars meeting, going up and down there and happening several times, many times each day. I noticed that the Hampshire highways don't raise any objection, but as you know, I've served on this planning committee for many years, and I think only once did Hampshire highways raise an objection to a scheme. I think, you know, their traffic engineers' judgments and the judgments of everyday car drivers are two rather different things. One of the points that's put forward is that agricultural working also creates noise and nuisance. Well, that's true, but the field is pasture and it's probably mown perhaps twice a year, so it's not a tremendous noise nuisance. One of the points raised in support is that the dog paddocks reduce noise nuisance, such as sheep worrying and fouling. I think this is a rather specious argument because the people whose dogs are badly behaved are hardly likely to cough up money and drive to take the dogs out. And I think putting forward the idea of something's acceptable because it's saving damage elsewhere is not a very solid argument. I've also noticed when we've had dog walking paddocks elsewhere, there tends to be a lot of other developments. Oh, we need a caravan for the staff. We need a storage shed. We need this. We need that. And it opens up a door, and then you end up with lots of retrospective planning applications, which, although legal, creates an awful lot of heartache for everybody. So I would. These are my reasons for objecting to this. Thank you.
Thank you. If you wouldn't mind pausing there, and members will come. We'll come back to members' questions of clarification at the end. Councillor, oh dear, Councillor Power, Margot, if you wouldn't mind giving us your 5 minutes, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this application represents an impact on residential amenity. And in this, it's actually death by 1,000 small cuts. We have 2 properties adjoining the site and a further 6 homes in the barns, which are being converted. This is one of the very few places in Alresford where you can still see the Milky Way because there are no ambient light levels, which is to be welcomed. Now there's going to be nuisance on 3 subjects. There will be noise. And I think those of us with experience of addressing either enforcement or environmental health matters, given the law surrounding our restrictions, we know that there will not be a speedy resolution of any breaches on either noise or planning grounds. The conditions allow for lighting. In my view, there should be no lighting. In rural areas, we carry a torch as there are no street lights, and that's perfectly satisfactory for most of us. And then the access. This is a single track road with no pavements and no holding areas, no passing places. We are looking at another 40 traffic movements a day on that single track road, which is the only access to these properties for both pedestrians and residents in cars. That is not manageable on that sort of road. There are 2 properties that actually adjoin the site that currently have a beautiful view over the valley. And although we have no right to a view, to actually have that obstructed by a 1.8 metre stock fence, and it's either that or lose your privacy because of the neighbouring activities, does seem unacceptable to me. I then want to draw to your attention, Chairman, a couple of comments from our own officers. The Animal Welfare Officer is not happy with the revised management plan that was submitted, despite revisions. This does not reassure us that the owners of the site have the expertise to manage this site. And our Historic Environment Officers refers to panorama and unspoilt views to the west and north across the valley and to the trees on the skyline beyond. I think some of you had the opportunity to visit the site yesterday and admire that. It is an important view, even if it is currently only enjoyed by 2 households. I hope that you'll be able to refuse this application, Chairman. However, if you are minded to approve it, I would request further limits on the opening hours and that there should be no lighting installed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Power. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for either of our councillors? No? No? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And now we have the supporter, Ed Daniel. Mr. Daniel, good morning. Welcome, come forward. You have up to 3 minutes and your time will start when you start speaking, and the microphone is turned on just by pressing the button on the base of the unit. So when you're ready, thank you.
Good morning, I'm Ed Daniel from Rural Space, speaking on behalf of the applicant in my professional capacity. Chair, members and members of the Planning Committee, on behalf of the applicant, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of this application. This proposal seeks to change the use of agricultural land to a secure dog walking facility, a use considered appropriate for a countryside location and recommended for approval by the case officer. The applicant and their planning consultant has worked closely with the local authority throughout the planning process to ensure that concerns raised by consultees and the public have been fully considered and addressed as follows. In relation to noise and opening hours, a noise impact assessment was conducted, concluding that in a worst-case scenario, noise levels from the paddock would be no higher than existing ambient daytime noise levels. To further mitigate any concerns, operational hours have been limited to 8 AM to 6 PM Monday to Friday, 8 AM to 1 PM on Saturdays, no use on Sundays or bank holidays. Additionally, a maximum of 4 dogs per session has been imposed with a 5-minute crossover period between bookings to avoid congestion. A management plan will also be in place, including a process for residents to report any concerns, which will be addressed promptly. In relation to site management and ecology, the facility will operate under a structure management plan covering waste disposal, parking arrangements and dog security measures to ensure safe and responsible use. The local authority's ecologist has confirmed that the proposal will have no adverse impact on notable habitats or protected species, and a biodiversity enhancement plan will be implemented, including additional planting to reinforce existing hedgerows. In relation to highways and access, the Highway Authority has no objection, confirming that the expected traffic levels will not result in significant harm to the highway network. The existing access off the avenue offers good visibility, and parking will be provided on site to avoid any disruption to surrounding properties. In relation to character and appearance, the proposed development consists only of stock-proof fencing, a common feature in rural areas, and a small, secure parking area. There are no buildings or additional structures proposed. Landscaping improvements, including additional tree planting, will further maintain the rural character of the site. To address farm diversification and economic need, agricultural businesses are increasingly required to diversify their operations to remain financially viable. Traditional farming incomes are facing significant headwinds, and this proposal provides an opportunity for the applicant to generate an alternative, sustainable income stream while maintaining the site's rural character. National and local planning policies support appropriate rural diversification, allowing landowners to make productive use of their assets in a way that contributes to the rural economy without compromising the countryside's character. In summary, this proposal represents a low-impact, well-managed facility that provides a much-needed service to local dog owners while respecting the character of the area. It complies with planning policies, supports rural economic sustainability, addresses concerns through conditions, and has been recommended for approval by the case officer. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Members, we have time for questions of clarification. Councillor White.
Could you tell us how many bookings per hour you'd expect and whether there is any lighting planned for like the winter months?
So you can either book a session that can be up to 55 minutes or up to 25 minutes, allowing a 5-minute crossover between two. So it could potentially be 2 bookings per hour. And the second question was on the lighting. My understanding is that there's no proposed lighting.
Could I ask about the access? Part of the access is through an existing field, that narrow sort of hedged field there. Are you proposing to put any sort of surfacing down there?
My understanding is that the applicant has submitted information to the case officer about putting in grasscrete, which will allow the grass to grow up through, which can then be cut, and so the access will remain as grass.
Thank you. Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to ask exactly that question. On page 124, it shows that it is literally a very narrow strip of just grass. I was concerned about the vehicle access.
Oh, and I wanted to ask about the height of the fence. So the fencing is going to be inside the existing fence boundaries, and what is that sort of border width, and how high are you proposing to build the fences?
So the gap between the neighbouring fence or the existing fence and where the new fence will be, I believe, is 3 meters. And the fence height is 1.8 meters. Yes.
Is that a standard stock fence height?
It's a standard fence.
Okay.
It can be erected.
If there are no more questions, Councillor Clear.
Thank you, Chair. The welfare officer, could I just ask you, please, shade, water facilities for the dogs, can you just elaborate on that for me, please?
Well, water will be provided in the parking area. There's no additional shade provision proposed. There are trees on site existing trees on site already, which will provide natural shade.
Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Am I allowed to ask why the parking is not in the narrow strip of land? It's actually in the field.
It's so that when the customer arrives, they go into the hard standing area, they close the gate behind them so they can let the dog out and then let the dog into the field. So there's not a risk that the dog might, if it was outside of the site and needing to bring the dog into the site, there's a potential when you open the door that the dog is not in a secure space.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. You may return to your seat. Thank you. Cameron, did you have anything to add before we get to members' questions?
I've got nothing further to add. Thank you, Chair.
So members, questions on the report. Councillor White.
So
members have visited the site, so we've all, at least 3 of us, I don't know if more. Okay, well, we'll show them whilst members are asking questions, if that's okay. Questions, members, to our officer on the report. Councillor White.
So I'm concerned about the number of vehicle movements, because if they can book 25-minute sessions, that's 2 sessions an hour, and so it's double the amount of vehicle movements on the previous application that we've just looked at. I don't know if there's anything, whether we can have any control over that or condition anything on that or not.
The only way I could potentially see about restricting that further would just be to limit how many they could have per hour, which would say might then just limit them to only allowing 1 booking per hour to then be, they say, the 55-minute slot only.
Would it be reasonable to add that to our conditions? Given the concerns that have been raised? We'll look at that. Any more questions, members? Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much. I know officers are discussing that condition, but I was wondering whether there was anything further we could sort of, because we're only 200 metres from the South Downs National Park, whether we could sort of beef up any condition in regards to lighting, or whether that's covered in the existing condition.
With regards to the lighting, condition 10 was attached as a precautionary to if they ever proposed any lighting or wanted any structures, they would need to seek planning before, they would need to seek. So yeah, prime minister, they would need to seek permission before any of that is added, but I say that doesn't guarantee it will be added, it will be assessed and considered appropriately.
Can we perhaps beef that up and say no lighting?
Yes, Chair, I'm going to recommend that. So that condition says no lighting of any type shall be installed. All that means is it doesn't restrict the owners from applying later on, but it's clearer that it's no lighting of any type shall be installed. We could go on to say details of any lighting prior to the installation shall be submitted to, etc., which is what the condition is already, but just precede it with that caveat. Yeah, we'll do that. And the answer to the other question in terms of the number of dogs and the hours, really that is quite an intrinsic part of the proposal, so I don't think we should be looking at adjusting those things at this stage in respect of which condition is it? Yes, condition 6 in terms of the number of dogs and how often they arrive, etc.
Councillor Ashwell.
I wonder if you can just clarify how close the 2 properties are to the field? What's the distance?
So Albury Park Cottage, I'll just go back to the site plan to give a better idea. Albury Park Cottage, which is the right-hand one, that was measured on the GIS system as being 40 metres from the rear of their dwelling to the boundary itself, with Old Cottage itself, the left-hand one, being around 39 metres to the boundary.
It is very open. Councillor Williams and I and Councillor Langford Smith were there for a site visit yesterday. Councillor Clear.
Thank you. Only 4 dogs in condition 6 should be allowed on the site with a single dog walker during each allotted time slot with a 5-minute. May I ask, because unless I've missed it, is there someone on site that can make sure this is all imposed and they don't break these rules, if you like, and conditions?
So from this application, there isn't anyone noted to be on site. However, they say it's got a booking system, and also within part of the management plan itself, there's going to be a complaint system which they said the applicant will have open dialect with the neighbours to, as they say, so if anything like that does occur, anyone else will be able to notify the applicant of what time and when, and then they'll be able to highlight that with the potential users of the site and say, these are the code of conduct which you've agreed to, so you have to follow that, and if you don't, they might be, let's say, barred from using the site again.
Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got 2 questions. One is the exciting introduction of a new reference document, the Hampshire Inventory of Historic Parks and Gardens. Is there any implication or notice we should take of its inclusion, this area being included in this inventory that we need to take account of?
Within this, it was considered, because we undertook consultation with our heritage officers as well to get their views on it, and it was considered, given the nature of the development with, they say, the 1.8 to 2 metre high stock fencing, that's within sort of the rural character of what that site is, which is an agricultural field, and so that wouldn't be out of keeping with what that site could have on it already, and thus it wouldn't have a I say, it would preserve, I say, the significance of that park itself.
And my second point concerns the distance between the dog field and the neighbouring properties. Isn't 38 metres. Visually, I can see it's about 2 metres between where the residents of that property could be expected to reasonably be and where the dogs in the dog field could be. Is that correct?
I took the measurements from upon this plan itself on our PDF, in which I checked the scale bar, which was shown to be accurate. And within that measurement from the fence to that boundary with the neighbouring properties, that was shown to be around between sort of 9 to 10 metres. And then also further measurements from the rear of the neighbouring properties. I'd say the right-hand one was said to be about 40 metres to the boundary. And then the left-hand one was shown to be about 39 metres to the boundary.
And I think the applicant said that the border, the boundary fence of the actual walking area would be 3 metres inside the existing fence field boundary. So, but yes, your point is taken. From the edge of their garden, it will be a lot closer, obviously. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I know it's been touched on already in regards to condition 6. I'm slightly concerned in allotted time slots, which could sort of change in the future. Could we be more specific with that? I know sort of it's explored about sort of, you know, per 1 hour, but is there any way we could sort of just clarify that a bit further? Because the worry is that it could go down to sort of 15 minutes, which would then sort of double, you know, potentially if the traffic movements from that, or is that already sort of covered?
Chair, I think that's a fair point. Dan and I have been discussing this a little bit, actually. It might be something that we say it could be delegated back for the precision of the wording, but definitely we could say only 4 dogs shall be allowed on the site with a single dog walker, and only 1 dog walker on a site at a time, because it could imply that you could have multiple dog walkers. And then in terms of the crossover period, I think that's fairly clear. enforceable because you could just go and watch. But in terms of the each allotted time slot, are you thinking of the each hour 1 hour allotted time slot, which should run sort of consecutively, not ever concurrently or something like that?
I think we'd be much more impressed if
Yes.
it was 1 per hour rather than anything more than that. I think that's reasonable given the local amenity and all the rest of it.
Just checking that it is 1 per hour already proposed, because that again is something that's a bit too broad to start negotiating on at committee.
So within the submitted document, there wasn't any specific one noting only for 25 slots. No, I can't guarantee that.
I think in the interest of local amenity, I think we can require an allowance per hour, and I think it should be 1 per hour would be reasonable.
Which is consistent with the previous one that we've just approved as well, actually, isn't it? Not getting any negative.
I mean, having more walkers does impact on traffic and noise and everything else. So
agreed, Chair. We'll look at the 1 hour time slots so that they're 1 hours consecutively, and then also single dog walker, 1 single dog walker at a time, and we'll delegate the precise wording back to yourselves. Okay.
Right. If there are no more questions, we will move to debate. Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I fully support rural businesses and I appreciate appropriate activities in the countryside. I am concerned about the access to this area. It is via a single track road and it's a private road. There are no passing places on that road. I am also very concerned about the noise nuisance. Whilst we accept that sustainable development should happen, it should not compromise countryside character, and we have to look at where is the harm. When I visited, it was silent there, so I'm struggling to find where there wouldn't be harm with the noise of 4 dogs on an hourly basis. It's only 40 metres to the boundary of the house. Dogs barking is, I mean, my own dog is very loud. Even in the house, the neighbours can still hear the dog bark. So I'm very concerned. I will listen to debate.
Councillor Williams.
Well, thank you very much, Chair. I share many of Councillor Langford-Smith's concerns, hence sort of trying to key that down to minimise the changeover, the traffic movements just to once per hour rather than what could be, 15 minutes or overlapping, periods where there could be, one sort of, dog walker, but multiple dogs, potentially another one then coming, making up to that 4 sort of dog limit. I was also sort of concerned in regards to the proximity to the National Park and Councillor Power's concerns in regards to the view of the Milky Way as well. So I'm glad that condition in regards to the lighting has been beefed up. I'm minded to support the application with those conditions. Although it is a very similar application to our one previously, there is a closer residential aspect to this. So I do think sort of adding in those conditions just to really tighten it up is essential. But I'll be supporting the application with those amended conditions.
Any more? Okay, so we move to the decision. This application with its beefed up significant conditions is recommended for approval. So can I see all those in favour of approval, please? Those against?
So it's 5 for, 4 against.
That application is refused. So hang on. That recommendation to approve has been refused. We now have to think again about the reasons for refusal and then vote again. So would you like to give me your reasons, planning reasons for refusal, please? Councillor Clear.
I know I didn't speak in debate, but I'm very concerned about the single road. I don't think it's manageable. I am concerned about the crossover and the traffic movements. Even though you're going to tighten up, or you would have tightened up the conditions. Those are my main concerns, and I really don't think it's going to work. Sorry.
Councillor Langford Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I believe it would compromise the countryside character, the tranquility of the countryside character.
Tranquility does look at noise impacts and other sorts of pollution, so amenity noise, yeah.
Councillor Ashwell.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Langford Smith. I mean, the close proximity to those two houses, I think the noise would be just too much, and how it will be managed. So yeah, that's my main concern.
Councillor Laming.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said so far. It is the noise and tranquility, and to a certain extent, the public safety of the road, as well as the people that are using it, because they're down there on their own and they've got 4 dogs and there's nobody there. There should be some safety built in.
Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In addition to those rationale expressed before, I don't believe that a strong operational need for countryside location has been explained.
Chair, it's always best to go with one good strong reason, and I would strongly recommend that the traffic impacts, there's just not in any way near enough movement in an existing sort of area linking into quite a major road to sustain that at all. And the same with the operational need, given the previous appeal decisions that we've had and the policy compliance of it, and the one that you just looked at before, really. But certainly tranquility, looking at our policies of DM13, DM17, DM23, MTRA4, and not having enough information or justification to show that noise proposals would not have a significant or detrimental effect on the neighbour amenities, which is something that the council's picked up on. So I suggest that we focus on that one issue of tranquility, the noise and neighbour impact.
Councillor Williams.
Sorry, I do have a question. Should this sort of go to appeal and go through on appeal, I just want to make sure that if it did go through on appeal, that those conditions that we sort of amended would still apply. It's more sort of a process question, really.
In answer to your question, yes, when we deal with the appeals, the inspector always asks us to put recommended planning conditions, which we then send to them, and then they consider those in their assessment and decision making.
Okay, so we now have, based on the reason for refusal as given by our officer, which is the impact on the tranquility of the area, it being a particularly open site and in a valley situation and so on. That is our reason, a proposed reason for refusal. So can I see all those in favour of refusing this application on that basis, please?
1, 2, 3, 7.
Anybody against? Abstentions? One abstention, thank you. So that application is refused. Thank you. Right, members, if we're ready for the next item on our agenda, we're looking at item number 9 at 8 Culverwell Gardens in Winchester, an application for an extension, and this is our officer presenting is Ethan Townsend. So over to you, Ethan.
Thank you, Chair. Before I start, I just want to draw up attention to the update sheet. Condition number 3 has been updated and it reads as follows. Notwithstanding the annotations detailing the proposed materials on the proposed plans and elevations and the materials specified within the materials section of the application form, the proposed cladding is not approved. And then it goes on to the standard, no development shall take place until material schedule and samples if requested demonstrating the materials to be used in the construction of the external surfaces of the development hereby permitted have been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. Yeah, I also want to mention as well some further comments of objection have been received by the residents on Culverwell, and a letter has been received from the planning agent. The relevant points have been addressed in the update sheet.
Thank you.
Now I'll start with the presentation. So as you can see, the red line for the application site denotes where the property is. It's a Victorian mid-terrace property located at the end of Culverwell Gardens off Culverwell Road, which is here. Unfortunately, the location plan isn't exactly the clearest, but there are other plans which will denote where it is. As you can see, it's one of 10 properties on this terrace, and it is located and set back from the road. To the rear of the site lies 1 Century's End, and then you've got Friary Gardens to the rear of that. This plan denotes that the site is within the Winchester Conservation Area. As you can see from the green dots and the red shading, although it's hard to see with the orange overlay, these are listed buildings. So the nearest listed building is Friary House to the southwest, which is probably about 63 metres away. And if not, you've got 28 Cannon Street to the north over here. Now, the aerial photograph provides probably the best context for the site. As you can see, it's unfortunately, I haven't laid it out in red, but it is this site here. So it is set back from the road, and the principal elevation is this elevation here. As you can see, the properties are fairly uniform in appearance from aerial view. They're all brick built properties with a pitched roof. Yeah, so this is the existing front elevation. As you can see, it's a fairly traditional Victorian property with a chimney, pitched roof and windows and door to the front. Under this application, there is a proposed roof light. However, roof lights can be done under permitted development, so therefore it wouldn't actually require consent. But this is proposed, well, is shown in the proposed plans in the proposal. Next, I'm going to have to try and walk you through this in some detail because it's quite confusing. But on the left, we've got the existing rear elevation, and on the right, we've got the proposed rear elevation. Starting with the rear, most properties on Culverwell have, if you can see my mouse here, they have a 2-storey rear element that projects from the house, which is an original element found along this terrace. Then you've got an inset here, which also matches the inset of the neighbouring property number 9 here, which then has another protruding element. As you can see, as part of the proposal, this 2-storey element would be demolished and it would be replaced with what you can see here is a 2-storey flat roof extension. This extension matches the same depth as the original 2-storey rear element. However, obviously, due to the change in roof form, there would be an increased height. This extension does have a marginally wider width of 0.9 metres, but obviously keeps a setback of 1 metre from the boundary shared with this neighbour. At ground floor level, you've got a fairly standard asymmetrical pitched roof ground floor extension, which does protrude further past the depth of the 2-storey rear extension. And when we get to the floor plans, you'll see how much it protrudes. This is it, just yet again in detail, just showing the proposed rear elevation. It's exactly the same plan. But I just thought it might be better to refer back to later on in the presentation. On this plan particularly, what I wanted to show is the change in height from the existing, so this is the existing 2-storey element And as you can see here on the section drawing, this is the change in height from what there's a red outline here which shows the existing sloped roof, and this is what it's going to change to. You can also see from the section drawing the amount of depth of the proposed ground floor extension, so it leaves about a 1.5 metre gap in the rear garden to the boundary. Now here you have the existing floor plans. As you can see, like I've already suggested, this here on the ground floor and at first floor level is the two-storey rear element, which is going to be demolished as part of this proposal. Now here on the proposed floor plans, just to clarify, at ground floor level, obviously there will be a rear extension at single story level going to this depth, and then at first floor level you've got a flat roof construction which matches the depth of the original two-storey element. Yeah, and also as denoted before, there is a loft conversion proposed, but like we've already said, that is considered to be permitted development. Here, so on the top, you can sort of see the variety of different extensions that have taken place from Culverwell, with number 1 on the far left, obviously not having an extension, to number 10. So the application site here is number 8, so you can see how the ground floor pitch roof extension and flat roof second story extension would fit in with the wider context of the rear elevations on Culverwell. This on the bottom here, we've got a diagram that really just shows the depth and width of previous extensions here. So as you can see, number 2, number 4, number 6, number 7 and number 9 have extensions to the property. And then number 8 obviously shows that the ground floor extension is going to meet the width of the site. And there's about a 1.5 metre depth here. This plan just shows a 3D model of a view from the site from the north looking towards the south. The application site is this one here, if you can see on my mouse. So this is the two-storey flat roof element, and then there's a pitch roof here. So it sort of just shows you what it would look like in the context of to the rear of the site. Obviously, these views are mainly private views from other properties within the conservation area, so it's not a public realm view, but it's still important to see how it interacts with the roofscape and how the extension interacts with other properties and the existing dwelling. So here, during the course of the application, the applicant submitted a shadow study. These are useful in sort of detailing how the property is going to interact with overshadowing elements. However, obviously, during the course of the application, I visited the site and I was already made an assessment on overshadowing, but this is to supplement that. So if you look at the existing on the left here, this is the application site with the two-storey rear element. And as you can see, with the flat roof on the right and the ground floor extension, there isn't a significant amount of overshadowing at 9:30 in the morning. The next slide shows the difference at 11:30 in the morning. So yet again, there's not a significant impact on overshadowing between the existing and proposed. The next slide's taken at 1:30, and obviously due to the course of the sun, there's already a lot of shade presented in the gardens. I will just clarify, sorry, I should have said at the beginning, these are taken during the winter solstice. So this is where the sun is at its lowest point in the sky. But yeah, like before, the existing and proposed do not show a significant impact. And I think this is the final one at 3:30 p.m. As you can see, most of the rear gardens, specifically towards the end of the terrace, 10, 9, 8 and 7, are already significantly overshadowed by the existing, well, due to the existing topography, orientation and existing built form of the site. Now we're moving on to photographs of the site. So number 1 is taken from the end of Culver Road looking towards Culverwell Gardens. As you might be able to make out, this is the application site here, etched in red. Number 2 and number 3 just show close-up photos of what the application site looks like. As you can see, it's a traditional brick-built Victorian terrace dwelling. Now, these photos are taken from within the site. I don't know why. I'll start with the one on on the right. This one's looking from the rear garden, looking at the property. So this is the two-storey element here, which would be removed. There would be a flat roof, two-storey flat roof rear extension, which would match the depth of this existing element, but obviously would have that change in roof height due to the flat roof as opposed to a pitched roof, and it would come out slightly wider by 0.9 metres here. And then you'd obviously have a ground floor rear extension extending the majority of the depth of this garden. Yeah, the top left is looking from this inset here, looking towards the rear boundary of the garden. So as you can see, it's fairly overgrown at the moment, the rear boundary. And the bottom left photo just sort of shows the existing shed, which I believe has now been demolished on site. Now, these photographs are looking specifically towards the neighbouring properties. So the main neighbouring properties here are number 7 to the north and then number 9 to the south. So number 4 is looking towards number 7. So this is the boundary wall here, and this is their number 7's extension, so their conservatory. And then they have a outdoor amenity area just to the rear of that. Number 5. Photo number 5 is looking the other way, looking to the south, looking towards number 9 at their site. These photographs were all taken from number 9 Culverwell Gardens. So the first photograph, well, number 6 was taken at ground floor level, looking towards the application site. So obviously, as part of the proposal, the two-storey element and ground floor element would be visible from this viewpoint. Number 7, photograph number 7, is taken from first floor level, looking towards the application site. As you can see, this is the existing two-storey element, which will be removed and replaced as part of this proposal. And number 8 is taken from this. If you see on number 7, there's like there's a window here, sort of an inset window. It's looking towards. You've got the application site here on the right, and the neighbouring property, number 9 Culverwell, on the left. And finally, this photograph is taken from number 7 Culverwell Gardens, looking towards the application site. This is taken specifically from their conservatory. So what would happen as part of this application is the roof form of this element here would change from a pitched roof into a flat roof construction. Thank you for listening to my presentation. The recommendation is for approve as set out within the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ethan. We now move to public speaking, and our first speaker is the objector, Martin Holmes. Mr. Holmes, welcome. Good afternoon. As you know, you have up to 3 minutes. I think members have also received information from you as well. Up to 3 minutes when you're ready, and the time will show on the screen. If you could switch on the microphone with the button, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I speak for several neighbours and myself. This has been a protracted application. It has given us cause for major concerns about massing, overbearing, overshadowing materials throughout. The officer has belatedly taken into consideration the conditions on materials attached to an earlier uncontested permission at number 2 Culverwell Gardens. He is now recommending an updated condition 3 that excludes the proposed cladding. But it is vague and does not follow in full the 2017 precedent, which specified brick to match. The type of material should be decided in advance of granting permission and be exposed to public comment. Materials has been just one of our concerns. The update misses the point on the applicant's shadow study. It was only released into the public domain last Friday. We think there are reasons to challenge it. It does not correspond to our own observations. We haven't been given sufficient time to commission expert advice. We say that there should be an independent light and shadow report to full building research establishment standards. Insufficient weight has been given to our concerns on massing and overbearing, and the report underestimates the adverse effects. Instead, it overemphasises entirely conditional statements from the High Quality Spaces SBD about possible effectiveness of contrast between contemporary and traditional. They are not prescriptive. These are small cottages. We all derive significant amenity value from their rear spaces. Existing extensions have smaller footprints than what is proposed and are all single story. The proposal will be much bigger and would overwhelm numbers 7 and 9. We question the rationale for dismissing this. The photos on page 5 of our submission show the impact of placing a 2-story wall almost a metre closer to the windows of number 9. The planned single-story extension is significantly higher than number 7's conservatory. They are not of a similar height. The pitched roof would be almost another metre higher and will block the flow of light as shown at page 7 of our submission. A completely glass roof might partly redress this. In summary, we have been disadvantaged by the late release of a core piece of evidence on overshadowing. The officer has underestimated the impact in terms of policy DM17 and given insufficient weight to the effects on the enjoyment of neighbouring properties. Materials is undecided. For these reasons alone, we say it would be wrong in principle to make a decision today. Finally, we wish to put on the record that we emphatically reject the unsubstantiated and false statement made by Southern Planning Practice in its letter to you of last Friday and posted on the Council's website that the applicant has experienced hostility from us. This is not the case.
Okay, thank you very much. That's the end of your 3 minutes. Thank you very much. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for Mr. Holmes? Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you. I noticed from the officer's images he displayed that the first floor extension at number 6 is different to others on the street. Could you explain how the extension on number 6 differs from that which is proposed?
The extension on number 6 is a single story block that goes along the original east-west access of the rear wing. So it's the same width as the original wing. It extends up to about half a metre away from the retaining wall at the end of the garden. At number 6, there is also a dormer in the roof of the sloping rear wing. Number 9 has a single story extension. Number 7 has a conservatory extension. Going further along the terrace, number 4 has a glass extension which covers almost the whole of the rear yard. Number 2 has a very well designed rear extension which only comes out to the existing western building line.
Any further questions of clarification, members, for Mr. Holmes? No, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your time, Mr. Holmes. Thank you. And now we move to the supporters. We have Alexandra Webb and Daniela Salgado Silva. Is that right? Yes. Welcome. You have up to 3 minutes between you, and the timer will start when you start speaking. Thank you. And then that's it.
Chairman, members, thank you for the opportunity to address you today. And following on from the clear and precise presentation by the case officer, I just wanted to add the following comments. It's not unusual for proposals to be amended and revised during the course of an application, and all the necessary changes were republicised and neighbours were notified in accordance with procedural requirements. There are several examples in this terrace which have been modified over time. A small overall proportion of the fabric of this building would need to be replaced. However, the property isn't listed and it's not a locally listed building or non-designated heritage asset, but it is in the conservation area. It would therefore be possible to remove some of this fabric under permitted development rights. In terms of the impact on amenity value, a close relationship between neighbours already exists. It's been demonstrated that there wouldn't be any impact on number 7 or number 9 in terms of overlooking. in terms of overshadowing, and the remodelling of the two-storey element would change the relationship with number 9, but this is not considered harmful in terms of any overbearing impact. Photographs prepared by objectors were fairly simplistic and only an estimated visual interpretation of how the scheme might appear. These haven't been verified either. The applicant has provided scale drawings with dimensions to illustrate the proposed separation distances as required. The scheme is carefully designed. The proportions and roof lines reflect the existing built character in the terrace. It provides an effective contrast between modern and traditional, and whilst maintaining subserviency and the prevalence of the main dwelling. It's not been intended to repeat the traditional design, as this could detract from the existing main dwelling, and these principles are promoted in the Council's High Quality Places SPD and have been duly followed. In terms of the materials and finishes, there is still the intention to use the cladding as proposed. The condition merely allows for that to be for those to be submitted later, and the reasons for choosing that is not only to reduce the carbon produced during construction, but for the life of the actual proposal itself. The aim is for the district to be carbon neutral by 2030, and the district's carbon neutrality action plan promotes greener homes and buildings, and which is one of the key calls for actions. And one of the 2 approaches includes retrofitting and building to higher quality standards. So these materials would do that, and they have actually been adjusted, and the amount of cladding reduced, whilst the side elevations would remain in brick facing. And also the cladding would remain on the main elevation.
That's the end of your 3 minutes, I'm afraid, but members may have questions of clarification for you. Okay, so perhaps I could start with the question about the materials, which I think has caused quite a lot of concern locally. Are you saying that using red brick would mitigate against building an extension which will environmentally friendly and suitably insulated and so on?
It would improve those environmental credentials of the building in the long run. The whole production of brick itself needs more carbon than it's needed for the steel cladding.
You could use heritage bricks. You could use
could possibly use recycled bricks, possibly, yeah. Whether they're available to match in.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, members? Councillor Godfrey.
Thinking about other materials, what other materials did you consider instead of the metal cladding?
Outstanding of, I guess, the matching existing red brick, we considered timber cladding. The reason why we kind of stepped away from that is the maintenance factor of it. And we chose for just accessibility, cleaning, ease of change would be the mild steel cladding.
You'll see from the update sheet that all the materials decisions is yet to be made, in fact. So depending on the debate and members' views, that can be taken into account when finally agreeing the materials at the end of the process.
I just ask for a clarification of that point, because both the applicant and the opponents said that revised condition didn't change the situation. It seemed to indicate that regardless of that condition, if there was an expectation that the black steel material was still going to be used.
It really just means that you don't have to make a decision on the black cladding today, and that means that we can open up further conversations about that, but that would be then between myself, my officers and the applicant. The information is then published when the decision is made through the details and compliance process. I mean, it is shown on the plans, it is their intentions. If it's not happy, you're not happy with the materials proposed, you'd have to have planning harm reasons to do so. That would be quite difficult to establish now because it's been more ambiguous as to what the materials might be. You've heard the arguments for the use of different materials. The applicants are trying to be sort of flexible because there's lots of different views on this. We've granted many planning applications in heritage contexts that have a contrasting material with the traditional brick materials of Victorian properties. There's lots of different approaches, there's lots of different opinions on it. So having this condition means it's flexible for the we can bring the heritage officer involved as well for the professionals to have a really good look at these Victorian buildings.
So if we're happy for our heritage officers to have significant impact on the decision on the materials, that can be decided based on our local plan and precedents and all the rest later. Okay, thank you very much indeed. If there are no more questions of clarification, no, thank you very much indeed for coming along. Okay, so Ethan, do you want to update us on anything else?
Actually, no, I think Lorna covered it, to be fair.
Members, questions on the report, please. Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to carbon neutrality 2030, do we have any information on the carbon footprint of the amount of steel required for the cladding as opposed to using brick or even better recycled brick? Thank you.
Unfortunately, we don't, and it's not something we normally standardly ask for a house order application because they are smaller applications. So I don't have any information specifically on that.
I was just mentioning to Councillor Rutter that in our emerging plan, there's a whole suite of conditions that look at climate change and carbon footprint, and we've been discussing developing a validation requirement for that sort of information up front for members to make a decision on later on. But as it currently stands, that's not something that you can take into account really in assessing whether this is a harmful proposal. But obviously within the context, again, there is a materiality to these considerations.
Councillor White.
It's not entirely clear on the plans. Are there any windows on that first floor extension on the side elevation? Or are they all the windows facing to the rear?
There aren't any windows, but if you look here, there's no windows shown on the floor plans. But I mean, if you wanted complete clarity, you could always add a condition saying no windows on, well, albeit they couldn't do it under PD anyway, they could only be over a certain height, but you could also add that condition if you needed that clarity.
The plans are conditioned, aren't they, as shown?
Yes, but I meant if they did it retrospectively, for example.
Any more questions on the report, members? Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you. The report doesn't include a consultation response from the conservation team, although this is in the conservation area. I wonder how the impact of the proposal was assessed on the conservation area.
Yeah, so the conservation team weren't consulted on this application. They're not standardly consulted on all applications, and as set out previously, it's not a listed building, it's not a non-designated heritage asset. So as officers, we have our own experience of dealing with applications within the conservation area. And as Lorna has previously pointed out, this is a fairly typical approach we do get modern extensions to terrace properties within the conservation area. So hopefully, has that helped answer your question? Yeah.
Well, I'll try and conclude it then. In addition, what Ethan has done is looked at the conservation area appraisal itself, because we have to understand what's so special about this heritage asset, and he has done that, and that is set out in the site characteristics of the property, and that's through training that we have as officers from our heritage specialists, and they're there to take specific questions or to do a full analysis if we think that's required in a proportionate way. And the report also has a whole section on the historic environment by looking at the relevant policies and the conservation area, and then the conclusions in there. So that's how it's been taken into account, which is the proper way. They're not a statutory consultee, but they're certainly closely working with us within my service.
Thank you. This proposal seems to be introducing a number of different elements into this conservation area that differ from the existing structures elsewhere, and therefore might have a change the character of the area. And I'm not quite sure I understand how that's been assessed. I mean, for instance, introduces a significant flat roof. We have the black material. We've got the steel material. We have the asymmetrical extension, and the use of an extension in that area, which is not glass roofed. Now, individually, these seem to be interesting ideas, which may not raise objections, but all of those in one location would seem to be at odds with what everyone else has done over centuries, and therefore how is that going to impact the character of the area, and how is that not going to be an adverse impact?
I mean, this is discussed in the report, but I will say, obviously, like I've said, it isn't from a public realm perspective. So it is, the viewpoint still, as it's in a conservation area, we do have to consider that and the impact on the conservation area. And from the principal elevation, obviously, there won't be an impact on the conservation area. From the rear elevation, there are contemporary elements that are being introduced. However, overall, we've decided that it is on balance not going to be adversely harmful to the conservation area. Specifically as well, with conditions on materials, these can be consulted upon with heritage at a later stage if that was a concern. But when it comes to for example, the ground floor rear extension, the pitch roof was specifically suggested as opposed to a flat roof because it's a more traditional roof pitch in a conservation area, albeit it won't be visible from wider points outside of the immediate surroundings. When it comes to the flat roof, I can understand some points, but overall it is a contemporary approach. It's not attempting to imitate what's already been done before, and these approaches, when done with high quality materials, can be successful.
I think you just need to make a decision on the application that is before us, I'm afraid, Councillor Godfrey. Okay, any more questions on the report? If not, we'll go to debate. So, Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. Having considered obviously the objections and the considerations with regards to overshadowing and overlooking, I'm quite content that that is not the case in this application. I know there have been concerns in regards to the materials, but this is a development to the rear that is not visible or accessible by the general public. So I am a little more sort of willing to give leeway towards sort of any alterations in materials on this particular development. Again, not accessible to the public and or viewable by at the rear with a significant elevation to the rear as well. But I do, in regards to that, do appreciate the amended condition regarding materials. I think that has been sort of addressed because we aren't deciding on the particular materials before us today. So I'll be supporting the application.
Councillor Ashwell.
It's quite a difficult decision. I just find it a bit overbearing. There's not much garden space left. I just find it's overdevelopment of that site. So I won't be supporting it.
Councillor Small.
Yes, I agree with Councillor Williams and what he said. I was also, well, we've been talking about maybe too much development on this site. When you look at the massing of neighbouring properties, it seems like it's actually going to be smaller than some. So I don't think it's out of keeping with what other people have done on the same row of houses, and therefore I will be supporting the officer with their recommendation to approve.
Any more? Yes, I think I will be agreeing with the officer recommendation. If you look at the backyards are quite small. It is an amenity space. They will still have some amenity space, but those, I think it's north facing, those backyards. Is that right, Ethan? Are they north facing? Anyway, they have quite high retaining walls at the back as well, don't they? So all of that combined means that it's a limited use amenity space as well, and some of these extensions have used it up completely. So I don't think it's out of scale with other applications on the same row. So I will be supporting the recommendation of the officers. So if there's no more contributions to debates, we will go to the decision. So can I see all those in favour of this application, please?
5, Chair.
And those against?
4, Chair.
So that application is permitted. Thank you. And we move quickly, please, on to the next application, which is item number 10. Okay, members, if members of the public who are not involved in the next application would mind just vacating the room, please, in your own time, that would be very helpful. Thank you. So our next item is number 10 on our agendas. It's an application for a heat source pump at 4 Abbots Ann Road in Winchester, and our presenting officer is Charlotte Smith.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair. The application is for an installation air source heat pump in the back garden. To clarify, this has been called in due to the applicant being an elected member of Winchester City Council and the Cabinet Member for Climate Emergency. Slide 2 shows the location plan of the property outlined in red. Properties 2 and 4 are link attached via garages. Slide 3 shows the aerial view of the property indicated by the yellow star here. Slide 4 shows the block plan. The red box here indicates the placement of the air source heat pump. This slide is designed to show the relationship between number 2 Abbots Ann Road here and number 4 Abbots Ann Road. The red line here indicates number 2's, the red line here indicates the property boundary. The yellow arrow here indicates number 2's garage, with this arrow here indicating a converted former garage, which is now a single-storey rear extension. There is also a final arrow indicating the existing patio for number 4. Slide 6 shows the details of the air source heat pump and a mock-up of the relationship with number 2, which you can see here and here. The white line, oops, sorry, I've skipped. The sound effects have been measured in a microgeneration certification scheme. This has been discussed on page 168 of your agenda pack, but for ease, the decibels have been measured and confirmed to be acceptable. Slide 7 shows the application site from Abbotsand Road, from the back garden of number 2 Abbotsand Road here, at the rear of the application site here and here, with the white lines indicating where exactly the air source heat pump will sit. Thank you, Chair. The end of the presentation.
Thank you very much. We don't have any public speakers, so members, do we have any questions on the report? Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you. Why is this application not being dealt with under permitted development rights class G?
The applicant asked for this to be done because it was close to the property boundary. Sorry, and
because the class G would mean it doesn't need to come. Why are we wasting time satisfying the needs of a of one of our own who?
Chair, can I jump in there?
Yeah.
It's because it's within 2 metres of the boundary, so it doesn't classify as permitted development.
It is not permitted development, is not covered by Class G, and therefore it has to come to Planning Committee as it's a councillor's application.
I'm not sure. I would welcome.
That's from Mr. Simon Avery, our one of.
I would welcome some guidance from officers offline on that, because that's not my reading of the permitted development right.
Well, let's take that offline, Councillor Godfrey, if that's okay. Save our time here. So if there are no more questions from members, debate. Is there any debate? So this application is recommended for approval. Can I see those in favour of approving it, please?
9 unanimous, Chair.
No, none against. So that application. Oh yes,
So 8. Sorry, unanimous. Apple's left the room.
So that application is approved. Thank you very much. We will now take a break for lunch and we will return at 2 p.m. Thank you.